All right. Good evening, everybody. I was out on an adventure. My phone died pretty early on inside of all of that, so if you have been trying to reach me, or if you've been tweeting, or Snapchatting, or any of these things that the youth of today are wont to do, you've been unsuccessful. But I'm here, and we're back with Rhizome Capital. I am missing my pen. Just give me a second. It's a disaster. At least it's still loading. But yeah, hi. It's Monday, so we do Paradox Grand Strategy. I've really wanted to jump back into Crusader Kings 2 because Holy Fury is actually pretty interesting. And I didn't get as much of a chance to show you all the things that they added in by virtue of... Holy smokes. I need to stop wearing my shoes by the computer. Sorry, obviously I am rushing to try and jump back into the game, but I do actually need to write stuff down while I'm playing this time, so I am slightly sidetracked while I try and find my writing implements. But yeah, I'd really like to jump back into Holy Fury before too long, and especially before a new DLC comes out, because there's some really neat stuff inside of it which we only got to sort of touch on ever so slightly before the playthrough got a bit pear-shaped. And one of the problems that I run into, this one was really unlucky because I got my key a bit later, and then Megacorps sort of came out almost immediately after. And I tried to balance the content, especially for Crusader Kings, because I know it's a game that people kind of want to see some more coverage of. And not just for me, but like in general. I think it's the game that streamers, they like playing it, but it's the one that sort of loses its momentum a bit faster than, say, Europa Universalis or Stellaris. And so I sometimes think there's a little bit of a disconnect in terms of how much Crusader Kings people want to see and how much people want to play. And that's that's a bit of a challenge that I try to meet myself, because I can get a lot out of sitting down and playing games on my own. So for instance, I've not always had a lot of success streaming Europa Universalis 4, even though I like it a lot. So that's one that I sort of, I buy the DLC on my own and I play it on my own. And I think it's actually possibly the one I have the most playtime in, or it's close to the one I have the most playtime in. But clearly I don't do it online because things that I enjoy playing aren't necessarily the same as what makes for a good stream. And with that in mind, as much as people like Crusader Kings 2, I tend to notice that there's more, whether you measure the number of people inside the chat or the amount of activity inside of chat, there tends to be a little bit more action going on inside of Stellaris. So with that in mind, I kind of calibrate accordingly. And again, it's not always about maximizing views, but it is, it's not a bad signal in terms of where, where people are going, where people, what people might want to see. The other way of looking at it too, it might not be a statement so much about Crusader Kings as the fact that maybe I've just developed into a better Stellaris streamer than a Crusader Kings streamer. Definitely I am a lot, like I talked a lot before, but I definitely say over the past year I have run into the tendency of just putting a lot of stuff on a pretty heavy hold. So like little dialogues like this, I'm not entirely sure in the past I would have done extended periods of time where it's just talking without any real gameplay. And so it may be that I've changed as a streamer rather than people's tastes. But one way or the other, I want to try and strike the balance where I can, and we'll see where it goes. I think I'm capable of managing Crusader Kings and Stellaris, but given that there's the one Grand Strategy day right now, I've on a little bit of a roll on Stellaris, so we'll see that through to a good pause point, or we'll maybe finish off the playthrough, and then we'll consider what the next step is. Now, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to take a quick minute. I don't even need to find my pen, but I need to find something to write things down with. So I'm just going to walk away from the keyboard really quick, and then we will jump straight into the gameplay. So sorry about that. I tried to filibuster as long as I could. Alright, sorry about that. And because I'm an utter clown, I got ink all over my hands as well, so... God, that took too long. Alright, sorry about that. Let's jump in, and... before we hit unpause, let's just see where we're at. So, obviously the last few sessions have been about dealing with my... basically dealing with my overexpansion, and my solution to it really has just been to lean into it. So the penalties that I'm facing at the moment, 38% to the technology cost, which is probably the one that hurts the most. Tradition adoption is another one where I'm really feeling the pain. I'm less worried about leader upkeep and leader costs because I'm just generating so much wealth. It's one of these things that I can overcome. So the big two priorities that I have in terms of resource production are Unity. Hey, Hidden Citizen, how you doing? I saw a body inside of chat, and then I had to go find my pen, which I then proceeded to explode all over. This is I like this pen a lot. It's from a company called Noodlers, where I'm certain the guy who owns it is insane. But it's very inexpensive, and if you order a big thing of ink, they give you a pen with it. And it's like it's very obviously made from it is the opposite of spare no expense. It is made well, and it is made affordably. But it's pretty solid, especially for just little note-taking and things like that. But it does have this unfortunate tendency, because all of the ink is held in the pen part itself. If it's only partially full, especially, you know, if you're holding it in your hand and it's warm, or if it's been in your pocket, you can take the cap off and you'll sort of find it full of ink, because obviously that's how physics works. But yeah, anyways, while I was trying to find it, I think there was a body inside and they left. And frankly, I don't blame them, because I am very slow to get started. But anyways, so yeah, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that as a megacorp, I'm not allowed to play as wide as I normally like. And the way that I've tried to mitigate it, and this may not be the right way of playing, but essentially what I've tried to say is I will expand on the condition that I am able to support it. So for instance, we've got this nice big Gaia world waiting here. Now it's going to take us a while to make this thing work, but obviously we're going to have a bunch of bodies on this planet producing goods and services for everyone else to sort of work with, or to consume, and in the long run it should pay off. And that's going to be a similar idea with this planet. Where is it? I don't think it's this one. There's a shrouded world somewhere. Well, somewhere around here, there's another Gaia world just waiting to be unlocked. So, in this case here, this is only going to make the expenses go up in terms of technology and tradition adoption costs. But the answer to that is to make sure that there are some dedicated planets, or not, some spaces dedicated towards the production of more technology and more unity. And then, of course, the next step towards that is to recognize that in order to generate these, chances are I'm going to need more consumer goods, because that's usually what the specialists require. And so at some point I'm also going to need to make those kinds of factories. Now, the big thing is that I think I can actually be pretty efficient at generating all of that stuff, which is why I feel reasonably good about it. But what I want to make sure is that rather than just expanding for the sake of claiming more tiles, that's actually what a lot of this exploration is about, to see whether or not I want to cause a bit of a scuffle with the Scythian League. Essentially, a lot of this is just sort of positioning myself to say, all right, I'm willing to take, Eunuch. And in this one, it's a little tough, right? Because it's only 4 engineering, and that's going to come at the cost of expanding my Empire Sprawl, admittedly just a little bit, but it's still going to be there. Now, it's a nice choke point. It is going to increase my kind of the what is it? It's the opposite of the cohesion. It's going to give me a small hit to my cohesion, but I'm pretty okay with that. But in this case, there's going to be sort of 3 entry points, where right now it's, well, okay, technically it's 3 right now, but eventually it will only be 1. So yeah, basically the idea is that at this point, I want to make sure that the resources that I'm putting into expansion are worth it. A planet like this is fantastic because it gives me 1 of each science type. A planet like Euless is almost certainly not worth the effort. I mean, 5 energy is nice. It would be nicer if it was 5 energy on 1 planet, which it's not. But in this case here, the real call for this is just to try and improve, or, well, not improve, but deal with the cohesion and maybe pick up, another 2 planets or so. Now, Hidden Citizen has said a couple things which I didn't respond to right away, so I just learned how to play the Civilization game. This game looks just as complicated. I would argue it is more complicated, but it does a good job of presenting the information to you. So the deal when you play a game like Stellaris is you spend quite a bit of time learning it, but that time pays off. When you play a game like Stellaris, you really do sort of live it. Like, if you get into this game, you are going to have a lot to do, and you're going to be finding out new things almost all the time. So in my opinion, that's really what makes it worth it. I did say I was going to unpause relatively quickly, and I do intend to do that, but there's one last thing that I want to do, which is right now I've got 3 corporate offices. Now, it's going to cost me influence to build any more, so it may not necessarily be worth it at this time, especially because I'm currently trying to promote Rhizome Capital, the Empire capital, as the location for the new galactic market, and that's going to cost me 300 influence, which I don't really have readily available. I can try and sort of buy off these factions, but I don't think it's going to work well for me. The Citizen Self-Determinism group is already happy. I mean, I could open the doors to migration with these peaceful creatures, but I have a feeling that we will lose more laborers. New contact, there's not a lot that we can deal with, and I don't believe there are any enclaves that we can incorporate. So in this case, it's it's a little it's just unfortunate that we're not really able to keep the Xeno Equality Lobby happy. And then finally, Science Without Borders, again, similar idea that we've got sort of Barkbarians, as Captain Shield is fond of calling them, to our left and to our right, and then we've got our rivals in between. So we've got two systems that we can make deals with, but the Stagnant Ascendancy isn't interested in any deals, and we're certainly not going to be able to convince any more species to trade with us for the next little while. So not much we can do on the influence side of the ledger. The one thing that might work out would be something like canceling some of my protections or some of my trade deals or something like that. I'm not entirely convinced that that's the best. I'm not entirely convinced that that's the best use of the I'm not entirely convinced that this is the way that I want to increase my influence. I think what I'll do is I have an incentive not to expand out at the moment anyway, and I'm going to sort of lean into that over the next few turns. So I'll unpause, but while we're at it, sort of looking towards the future, let's take a quick look at some of the planets which I haven't opened offices on yet. So
future market survey complete.
There appears to be a deliberately crafted structure on the planet's surface, pointing... Ooh. The United Hythian League entered into a commercial pact with the Benthari Star Realm. Do I know these guys? There appears to be deliberately crafted structures on the planet's surface, pointing towards a past long forgotten. So we'll... I suspect, yeah, these are my two sort of allies already. So apparently they're allowed to do commercial treaties as well. My bad. All right, let's try that again. So we've got one here, one here, one here. So Pollen. So 7.9 on the branch office. The thing is that it's a pretty small planet, so the likelihood of me being able to build a new structure is pretty low. Yod Bem.
Upscaling complete.
Similar idea, pretty small income and small planet size. And then this will be the most recent colony, so I expect something similar there. Yeah, the smallest amount, but at least that one has the largest room for growth. Okay, so this was Equity. This is my home base. I can't remember what I made them build. I'm going to assume it was probably something like an anchorage. But we'll live with that for now. Taking a quick look at trade. I thought we had some renegades who were kicking around, but apparently not. We are, however, down on consumer goods, though, so... The big dilemma is I don't have an easy answer for how I'm going to get around that. I've got 35 jobs available, so space for 2 more on YAML Prime. I might want to start... Oh, yes! Galactic market established in equity. Our marketing campaign on Rhizome Capital has borne fruit. Eh? Eh? Borne fruit? For those of you not familiar with this species, Rhizome Capital is pleased to announce that it has successfully completed its first round of seed capital. Our plants are already running at full capacity, getting ready to offer you the finest goods and services the galaxy has to offer. Tax season got you down? Our bean counters at Deloitte are licensed in all jurisdictions and legal systems. Need help with housework? Rhizome Robotics solar-powered photosynthetic assistants are ready to attend to your every need. Under the sage guidance of Ebenezer Hawthorne, we'll make you green. Rhizome Capital. Leaf growth to the experts. So yes, I'm very pleased to hear that our efforts have borne fruit. We've got the galactic market. Now, I'm not quite sure what this will mean for me, but our marketing campaign on Rhizome Capital has borne fruit, and the market powers that be have seen fit to centralize much of their activity within the equity system. The Galactic Market Station is established in the equity system, ends the founding the Galactic Market event chain, market nexus modifier added, giving the following effects: market fee minus 10%. That's great. So what that's going to mean is that it's going to cost me less in order to buy up things like consumer goods. So in addition to the fact that I'm making money hand over fist, it also means that I'm actually able to, I could be really inefficient in terms of how I run things. And I've essentially been given the ability to not to pay the price for that, because I'm making so much money and I'm able to buy my way out of my consumer goods problems. I personally don't go for sort of monthly, how do I put it? I don't go for sort of like these monthly purchase plans. I kind of like to have a rather stark accounting of sort of exactly what I'm messing up. You know, I have the option available to me if it comes down to it. So let's take a look at that beautiful new while nominally amorphous and independent of galactic
Special
geopolitics,
project
many of
actualized.
the administrative functions of the galactic market are physically located in this station. Special project completed. In a masterful display of engineering, the team under Science Officer Rowan Garland has managed to gently raise the derelict ship on Mindara 2 to the gas giant's upper atmosphere. Despite its age, the ancient cruiser is in remarkably good condition, and we have restored power to its systems. No trace of the original crew remains, but we have brought over our own and commissioned the ship into the fleet. So, bonus experience for Rowan Garland. Unfortunately, I'm even higher above my fleet cap, but I'll have to live with that. Behold the galactic market. I wonder if there's a fancy, is there like some fancy angle we can get on this? It's probably not worth spending too much time on it, but that is a fancy model. Alright. So Yuka, who is our friendly little, amoeba, space amoeba, and let's take a look at what this is. This is the Blossoming Bion Armada, which has got the derelict salvage. This is what? It's a cruiser. We don't have those yet. So, oof, that's a spicy armament. Cool. All right. I am content with that, although I probably need to come up with something for my science ships to do now. Yes. I think I need to... Yes, I need to hire a new... Wait a minute. So we've got society research. Oh, that's right. I built this because the traders are going to be coming into the system. In fact, I believe it's these guys. All affiliated caravan fleets uphold traditions predating the invention of subspace communications. We here at the trade station Tungle are the exception, thus all calls are rerouted to us. I'm afraid you'll have to wait for the Vengralian Tirum to contact you when they enter your territory once again, or depart it, depending on what you have agreed on. Why not try your luck at the slots while you wait? Very tempting. We can play the slots, we can open a reliquary, or we can purchase caravan coins. And this will be fun to do, but I think we'll save the frivolity for later. What else are we up to? Okay, so I went here to be sure that the sort of the threat that was in these systems had left. I'm gonna skirt around the Barkbarians and see what our options are here. What I'm mostly looking for is sort of a good choke point. Oh, it would help if I unpaused. So Orb's actually not that bad of a place for me to, to lock in a choke point. But on the odd chance that there's something, like let's say there was a system that looked a little bit like this, obviously I'd want to take advantage of that if I could. So. The planet Othvomia 2 is a toxic wasteland, but our scans seem unveil that it has not always been so. A now extinct civilization seems to have destroyed its home planet via heavy reliance on climate-altering fuels and toxins. On a remote hill, close to a major city, we have found a lone active facility, a robot assembly plant desolated and surrounded by military vehicles, so deteriorated that they break upon touch. The facility is alien and mysterious, but it could provide us with ample study material. A cautionary tale. So we can get the Improved Energy Initiative Empire Edict, and we get the Fallen Robotic Society modifier, so that makes this a somewhat desirable system to colonize. In fact, there's a little bit of an argument for me to push my boundaries out, because we've got Zulay Crow, which is worth the 3 engineering, 6 engineering, 3 society. And as it is right now, engineering is the laggard in terms of technology. The catch is that is definitely a pretty aggressive bit of expansion, and at some point I'm going to need to recognize the fact that my production is not going to keep up with my empire sprawl. So this might be something that I consider doing after I get some technologies that allow me to, to pull back a little bit on some of those sprawl values. Also, I've got a construction ship which is currently idle. So I am, oh, that's right, we've not yet got moat stabilization. Let's take a quick look at what how long are we waiting on that? 2 months. I am perfectly content leaving that ship to wait. The RCA Juris reports a significant crystalline presence in the Siplim system, evidently some kind of den, or at least a hub of crystalline activity, such as it is. Siplim is home to a crystal construct unlike any previously encountered. This construct exhibits several properties associated with the crystalline entities, but greatly exaggerated. This fella. Fortunately, these things don't attack me. Encounter in Strom. We've encountered some kind of vessels in the Strom system. These strange objects have been flagged the Teth aliens until we can learn more about them. We should proceed with caution. So I thought that these would have been... oh, nope, it's these guys. So I think that's another player. I was wrong for thinking so. These are the space whales. Interesting. I don't think these things are hostile, though. The amoeba definitely are. So these were the things that I was a little worried about.
Research actualized.
Alright, moat stabilization. Volatile moats are fickle particles that are dangerous to work with. In order to safely harvest them without setting off a chain reaction of explosions, energy fields must be used to stabilize the moats. So that's really good news for me. Johnny Big Time, you always know how to put a big smile on my face. Thank you very much for 13 months in a row. And in January, no less. So as the years go by, as we watch our life slip before our eyes, standing in front of computer screens, watching the prime years of our life vanish in front of these strange machines, you continue to steadfastly forget to cancel your subscription. Thank you very much for that, Johnny. I like your stuff a lot. In fact, I might as well get the shout out of the way right now. Obviously, I have a financial incentive to make you all like Johnny. But, oops. Sorry, just 1 second, folks. Okay. I really like Johnny's cast. There's something... So, I talk a bit about... followers and numbers and things like that. And it's tricky because I don't believe in this type of consolation that some small streamers give in terms of saying, numbers don't matter. Like anything, and I mean, I think part of this is just because of my background in terms of statistics and such. I think there is a difference between the information that... So there's a difference between the question that you are asking the numbers and the things the numbers are telling you. But one of the things that has been quite consistent in terms of my Twitch experience, and I particularly credit Johnny with this, he really... I think the thing that has always given me a lot of encouragement are when people whose stuff that I like, whether they're game designers or whether they are, streamers or content producers themselves, to use a more generic term, when they like and support my stuff, it is something that I really do value above and beyond. I love it. I love everybody who comes in regularly. It's really special to be able to encounter people and see regular names and be able to sort of bring back some of these memories. There are still people from when I was streaming very early on, and I can still sort of remember who they are and the first time that they came in and such. And that's always a special moment. It's something I like a lot. But I can definitely say that there is something really unique about somebody who is a content creator. So there's just something about somebody like Johnny whose streams I can't get enough of. Somebody who I think is one of the most talented casters I know, just for his ability to keep the action going and his his ability to sort of just project this really great charisma. The fact that he sort of takes the time to say hi, even when I'm playing games that I know he doesn't like, that really does mean something above and beyond. And it's similar with Cultist Simulator. Weather Factory was very kind in their comments about the stream. I was able to look at the stream in a way that I really didn't before. And so it is worth mentioning that Johnny is somebody who I do actually enjoy hanging out with when I can offline. He's a really great guy off cast as well as on cast. I know there's sometimes a little bit of a presentation. There are some people who play a nice guy on stream and like actors are rather indifferent or rather distant people. But all of the warmth and sort of the passion that you see that Johnny puts into his broadcast is there. And it's one of the reasons why every time I see him resub, it gives me a small amount of hope that maybe one day I will get better at broadcasting. So thank you, Johnny. I really do mean it when I say you put a smile on my face every time I see you come back. And I'm hoping that I continue to provide at least some minor level of entertainment to justify your monthly investment. The Eyes of Sin, another person who makes me feel like $1 million and definitely helps me pull me off the ledge when I'm feeling like less than God's gift to broadcasting. How are you doing? And you went from Johnny as my favorite streamer to I really like Johnny's cast. Yeah, Johnny, I will say, in truth, Johnny is my favorite broadcaster. I don't think I can show... I don't know if... There was that one dream that you had of I'm gonna keep the gameplay going. This is one of the things I'm actually gonna start trying to do a little more often, is to slow the game down rather than pause it while I say this stuff. I don't know if you still have this clip, but there was that one from The Witcher where you thought that you were going to a brothel and you found out you were in Triss's house. Like, that is one of my favorite clips from yours for, like, from recent memory, and I was trying to find it the other day and I couldn't. But yeah, I sometimes just like changing it up, but Johnny picked up on it. Oh God, what am I gonna do? Johnny really is one of my favorite casters on Twitch. No, he is my favorite caster on Twitch. And if you are not checking him out, definitely do so. It costs you nothing to follow, but that is not why I want you to do that. I would like you to follow Johnny because he really is an incredibly unique broadcaster, and he's somebody that I really hope gets sort of the recognition that he deserves in terms of the effort and the energy that he puts into his broadcast. So this is one of the best 2,000 energy credits that I've spent. I went from a deficit to a surplus. Now I'm still going to need to deal with the fact that I'm not generating enough consumer goods. That was one of the reasons why I held back on my technology, because I'm looking for some ways to sort of get those upgrades. My alloy production is going to go absolutely bananas once these upgrades come through. Now, I'm going to need to generate quite a few motes, so I'm basically looking at generating about 80 motes. The reason I say 80 is because it costs, I believe it costs a mote in order to be able to produce these.
Market outlier identified.
But we basically go from 6 to 15. We more than double the alloy output of these factories. There are fragments of an unknown vessel in close orbit of Siplum. Let's research that. Johnny has the most hilarious clips on Twitter. Yeah, like, this is one of the things, like, I wish I was as funny as Johnny. I wish I was as good at keeping the action going as Johnny. Like, I am not 100% sure. Like, this is the thing. Like, anytime we talk about Twitch stuff, I always sort of have to... I'm trying to get a little bit better at, like, adding 101 sort of disclaimers in terms of the things that I say. Because I know it's sometimes difficult, for me to get to the point. But one of the things we, especially recently, we've been talking about... Oh, we're going to have some combat in a minute. So maybe now is a good time to slow it down. But one of the things is that it's actually very difficult for me to account for the fact that
competitors engaged.
I have a oops. There we go. It's very hard for me to account for the fact that I've wound up with some more followers than Johnny, because by any measure that I consider, a stream to be good. Johnny is just I believe he is just simply a better entertainer than me. Like, I learn more about the games that he plays. I have more fun in his broadcast. He's just somebody who I really think has got a gift for entertainment. And it's one of the reasons why I try and take the time that I do to... looks like we've got an event that's happened. But by the way, this is a really beautiful game. By the way, Isaacson, if you ever want to play this game, I know it's a little scary to play, but I'm willing to put the time in. And if you are. I unfortunately have forgotten the number. There we go. And Johnny, if you ever want to come back to this, I would love to play Stellaris with you as well. But yeah, sorry, I just need to get up from the... I need to get up from the desk for one more minute. Sorry. Okay, I'm still here. I just need... one more moment. I'll catch up with chat here. Okay, nothing directed at me. Yeah, I don't know. Like, obviously there are different tastes and there are different reasons why people watch broadcasts. And obviously, I'm not necessarily. All right, this is driving me a little nuts. One more second, please. Alright, sorry about that. Just more pen problems, but I've got the cap back on it now. But yeah, I don't know, like, obviously I'm not necessarily respecting your own choices of watching this stuff here, but yeah, I've gotten the benefit of a lot of support from people over time, and the very least that I can do is extend that support to streamers who put a smile on my face, so... Esteemed Chief Executive Officer Bud Hawthorne, a decade ago, the Rhizome capital pledged to support the artisan troupe, and so you have. The time of your patronage is coming to an end. We'd be remiss not to ask, would you care to renew your subscription to the finest arts and crafts in the galaxy? In this case, I'm definitely doing this because, of course, the 10% bonus to monthly Unity is offsetting the fact that I've got a 63% tradition modifier. So, yeah, it's... I'm a little light at the moment. I'm spending 3,000. It's basically a third of my my energy reserves. But clearly, this is after. This is in the face of making 173 after all of my expenses. So, all right, nobody died, which is good news. And I think at this point, I'm gonna be happy to just send these guys back to my capital. You love writing lore, but you need to learn the game. So this is the tricky part, Sin. Like, actually, I think between Johnny and the Eyes of Sin, I've both given you Twilight Struggle and... Well, no, Johnny got Stellaris as part of Humble Monthly. Like, these are not easy games to get into, but they're ones that if you put the time in, like, if you find it rewarding enough to put the time in, I think they really do pay off. And if you guys are looking for somebody to play with in those senses, I am willing to take the time to help bridge some of those gaps. But on the other hand, I also sometimes know that there is a benefit to, like, learning a game on your own. Like, that's how I like to learn this stuff, so... the irradiated fragments of the RCA Juris crew registered in close orbit of Siplim are indeed the remains of a spacefaring vessel with a very distinctive design. It matches no known make on record. We've extracted some data from the ship's damaged computers, recorded in an alien language like nothing that we have ever seen before, and one we are unable to translate. By studying the remains, Science Officer Rowan Garland postulates that the craft, known as the Kotalo, suffered a navigational error when exiting FTL, bringing it too close to the gamma ray jets of Siplim. Large portions of the ship were stripped apart through radiolysis, and there are no survivors. Unfortunate, but we did get Society research. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, obviously, when I've always sort of felt that, like,
Upscaling complete.
Like a gift for a game doesn't... Like, sometimes if you give a gift and it's not someone's sort of thing, it ceases to be a gift and it's more of a job. So I definitely don't want to... I don't want to give somebody a job. But, I don't know, I like sharing this game with people, so. Research grants. What are we looking at here? Alright, so that costs influence, which I you know, it would be nice to be able to do more
A
research
system
rents,
has been
but
surveyed.
wavering signal haunts Nakam 4, though it does not seem to originate from the planet's surface. In this case, I'm gonna hold off on that one, just
Outlier
because I
identified.
need the influence to be able to expand my borders. In fact, I think I'm gonna do that here just to close that off. Cursory scan of the planet's surface reveals a weak signal pulsing into the darkness of
Future market
space.
survey complete. Research actualized.
And we've now got... I don't believe we actually have any planets that have these tile blockers on them, but this is more so to gain access to other clearing. The process of soil deposition normally takes millions of years. Deposition. With advanced fracking, chemical engineering, and hydraulic management technologies, even the porous substrate can be turned into fertile topsoil. So... Fleet Traditions doesn't really give me anything on its own. I think probably Fleet Support, in addition to being one of my least expensive options, is the one that will help me with some of my expenses. So in this case, let's do Fleet Support. But yeah, as with everything, like I don't want it to be, you know, I don't want a gift to suddenly turn into like a job. As much as I would love every person I know to like become a fanatic for Stellaris, I realize that there are other priorities. Variety is what makes us all interesting. I'm just trying to think of anything else that I can bring up, because there's two things that happen when I stream late. I know that the viewer count's going to be a little bit lower, and it's usually going to be people who are not always fans of Stellaris, and they're more sort of showing support on my end. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything I can talk about this game, or about future plans that might make sense. An emergency transmission buoy floats in gentle orbit around Nakam 4. Its outer casing is heavily damaged, seemingly by glancing weapons fire or powerful explosion. It might be a shareholder model for civilian ships, designed to be ejected as an emergency measure should the comm system fail, but the extent of the damage makes it impossible to know for certain. It is reporting a weak, distorted signal. So I can clean up the transmission, or it could be a trap, best leave it be. Let's do the emergency project. And... alright, so you've got a new priority, my friend. The signal originates from the remains of an antenna-like structure. Exploratory probes dispatched from the RCA Juris to the surface investigate the matter more closely. This is not the escape pod, by the way. This is Siblin. What Science Officer Rowan Garland found was a cavernous vault that, while easily pried open, was evidently the last safe house and refuge of some long-dead race of aliens. While reasonably technologically advanced, it seems that they never reached for the stars and perished to some planet-wide natural disaster. The vault is immense, housing thousands upon thousands of black boxes that the RCA Juris has determined to be data storage devices. A special project has been prepared to decode their contents. I like this one. This is kind of a neat... this one's a neat little bit of science fiction, so we'll research that project. It's not great that I'm doing this, by the way, because I do want to see what's in this territory, but it's also, I know that the enemy won't necessarily expand out here. My bigger worry is if they expand to Eunuch, but on its own, I mean, one nice thing about it is that there is science in each of these quadrants. The problem is that if I do expand out here, I suddenly have this expectation that I need to defend it, so... I guess the question is whether or not we're equal fleet strength, so it's not guaranteed that I come out better off. So I could possibly
Special
justify
project
expanding out to
actualized.
Eunuch because of... I could possibly justify this one because I can build a strong point. But obviously any systems that I hold here would sort of be forfeit to my rival if it comes down to it. So The spaceborne life forms, which the shareholder head of society research has come to refer to as Tianki, are docile creatures, capable of accessing some lower dimension of subspace. They roam from system to system with remarkable ease. They graze on gases common to the upper layers of many gas giants. It is highly unlikely, to say the least, that this is their only food source, but intake of other nutrients has yet to be observed. They will rarely, if ever, attack, even when provoked. They can safely be ignored. Hunting them would be a net loss anyway, and we've gained the frequency tuning modifier. Hello, Ragnastomi, how are you doing tonight? Oh, actually, one thing I will share on a side note. One of the things that's fun about playing these Paradox games, so obviously Stellaris is science fiction.
Special project actualized.
But I've been doing my, learning the countries and so I've learned all the countries of Europe, and one of the things I'm trying to do to reinforce that is now learn all of the capitals. One of the things I have learned, though, is that is a much more difficult proposition as soon as you try and do the capital of Slovenia. And if you are not familiar with that, I encourage you to Google that and take a look up. One of the reasons why I started off with Europe, of course, is because of Crusader Kings and Europa Universalis 4. It's kind of interesting to be able to see that map so often, and you have these associations with maybe how it was hundreds of years ago, and then sort of see how it looks today, and largely due to events that are sort of represented within those games. I find that one thing that's really rewarding, both about learning about history and geography, but also playing these games. I find they're a nice little way of reinforcing those things. So, what about countries with more than one capital? I haven't run into that yet. I don't know if there's any countries with more than one capital in Europe. If there are, I haven't seen them yet. The Ransomeers, SOS. I'm sorry to hear things aren't going well for you, Domi. The boy has been verified as one of shareholder make, and the signal it's relaying has been stabilized. Shareholder authorities, identify yourselves. Yep. Hello? This is the captain of the Luxion, a shareholder civilian transport. Former captain, the Luxion is gone. We were boarded by pirates and taken captive before they blew up the ship. Who are these pirates? I think they call themselves the Ransomeers? The Ransomeers. At any rate, they're a vile bunch. We'd be dead already if they didn't think they could get something for us from Rhizome Capital. I've overheard them discussing their demands. We will rescue you. Oh, thank you, Chief Executive Officer. We're being held in some space station, but I have no idea where we are beyond that. I'll increase the transmission burst now. It should let you triangulate the location of this prison from the emergency buoy.
Special project actualized.
All right. The vault is a tomb for hopeful immortals. Science Officer Rowan Garland asserts that the huge blocks of ternary code found in the databanks are neural images, digitized brain scans. Doubtless the aliens of Siplim 3 considered this to be their only shot at any kind of survival following whatever calamity befell their planet. They did not have the means to resurrect themselves, but banked on the impossibly small hope that eventually someone else would have those means. Bleeding followers tonight, but we did get that. This is one of the funny things. So we've lost 2 or 3 since the last broadcast, but in addition, the subs are up for the first time in a while. So that was mixed news. We'll see how things go. I actually am thinking a little bit about how I can adjust the cast to maybe be a little bit more broadly appealing, because I've I don't know, I definitely am prone to fits of melancholy in terms of the content. And I think if I feel like I'm putting a little more energy behind some of the things that I do, I might feel a bit better about it. All right, so let's download their neural patterns for safekeeping. The funny thing is that this is not necessarily a trade-off that I'd want, because my higher priority right now is for technology, not production. The trick here is that so the trick on this one is that eventually I'm going to be able to upload that consciousness into robotic bodies. And the idea here is that it will free up a worker to do more sort of research-focused tasks. Let me just take a minute and see where we're at. So I don't think I can do anything with this hangar bay at the moment. I also want to do a quick audit of my planets. So mostly I just want to make sure that I'm good for things like housing and amenities and whatnot. So it looks like we've only got one more district available, at least until we clear out some more blockers. I also need to find work for people. So I can go for energy, I can go for food, go for trade value and amenity. I'm pretty good for all of those, so I think in this case we're going to throw another generator district in. That'll basically take up all of the tiles, but that's life. These resources exist to be consumed. As for Gaul, there's not a whole lot for me to do here, really. I mean, I do need the extra amenities, but I don't think that is for... So that's not really for lack of opportunity. I've obviously got enough room for clerks. It's just that the jobs aren't being fulfilled yet. So I'm going to leave that be for now. Pytham's got 3 more slots available. We're okay for housing. Yeah, this is a tricky one because this isn't necessarily an ideal planet for energy production. There might be an argument later for things like more city districts and that, but I'm comfortable letting this be because we'll get to 35. We'll be able to build a new facility here when the time comes. And Akram is just a brand new planet. Lots of space available. Amenities aren't great, but we've got a surplus of potential jobs, so I think I'm going to leave all of that be. Okay. So before I finish surveying this, I'm just going to do research projects. So this one's a little less obvious. For those of you who don't know this, so most games this is pretty standard. If you hold down Shift and click, it'll usually put things in a queue. So for instance, if you're playing something like StarCraft, you can queue up certain movements. So that'll say, you know, this is really helpful if you say, okay, I want you to move around this strong point, and then I want you to attack. You can do that. So that's true of Stellaris as well, but what's a lesser known feature, although somebody tweeted it out recently and then it seemed to blow everyone's mind, so that's good news, I suppose. But basically, you can hold, I think it's Control-Shift? There's Control. I usually do Control-Shift, but I don't know if the Shift does anything. But you can, if you hold down Control, at least Control-Shift for me, and do an action, it won't just add it to the queue, it will actually add it to the top of the queue. And that's particularly helpful where, so what I used to do before I learned about this tip, I would have like these big exploration plans like what I've got here, and then I'd be, oh, there's a new special project for me to do, so I'm gonna, I'm gonna have to put everything on hold and, and research this and then move around now. The nice thing about this is that you don't need to redo your flight plans. So just a A tip from me to you if you didn't already know that. Sensors report a ship with seemingly identical properties to the unique remains uncovered near near Siplum has just dropped from hyperspace in the Philomere system. They are hailing us. On screen. The crew of the strange ship that mirrors the wreck found near Siplum seem excited to speak with us, though our translators cannot decode their language. They identify themselves with a low-frequency verbal expression that sounds like Kotalo, a name that we've heard before. Perhaps we can communicate using raw data. Try to ask what their purpose is. We receive a flurry of data in response, including cartographic imaging of a neighboring galaxy and footage of what can only be engineers working on an alien FTL drive. We can draw no other conclusion than that these are explorers from another galaxy. Their ship's lack of weapons capacity would support this theory. We send back footage of corporate explorers on their first journey beyond our solar system, and the reaction from the alien crew appears to be jubilant. Send in data recovered from the Siplum wreck. The excitement of the Kotalo crew seems to evaporate. Multiple crew members begin to tap away at consoles using their tentacle-like appendages. They transmit what appears to be their passenger manifest, navigational data, and crew logs to us. Without a doubt, the data matches that of the Siplum wreck to the letter, with one exception. The Siplum wreck contained further entries with later dates. It would appear that the Siplum wreck is the same ship as the one now before us, only older. This isn't possible. Despite their alien mannerism, the Kotalo crew's consternation is evident. Our own scientific attachés inform us that if the Siplum wreck is indeed the future of the ship before us, any information we give them may have unforeseen consequences. So we can say, if we warn them, they may avoid disaster, or we can't risk further timeline interference. No, we're always open to new trading possibilities. Send the Kotalo a warning to avoid the Siplum pulsar. The extragalactic explorers begin poring hurriedly over the system data we send them, speaking to one another in their strange language, and entering a flurry of commands onto their consoles. Our diplomats wait patiently for a reply, but before it can be done, the ship's engines begin to power up unexpectedly. Before we can react, they've vanished. Good luck, Starfarers. The fine tradition of failing to be rewarded for doing the right thing.
Research actualized.
All right, so we've got improved deflectors. These updated deflector screens are capable of soaking up even more punishment before they overload. That was kind of more me punting, if I could. Well, so far they've lived, Isopson. But we'll see what happens, because these things have a habit of coming back. So our options here, we can do the mining drone laser, which will be the fastest one. Will be kind of the fastest one for me to throw through. We can get hyperdrive too. I can't remember exactly what this does. I don't think it gives me more hyperlanes. It lowers the jump charge time. So that's better for mobility, which is not bad because I've got a fairly wide empire. I'm very tempted to do mining lasers because, I mean, it says that it's 39 months versus 49 months, but I already have 1,000 towards it. Although technically this still costs more, so small and medium, so average damage of 2.9, 682, 361, 909. Yeah, so it's really hard for me to actually justify including researching this one. I think we'll do the lowest cost, which would be the UV laser, because it's a better weapon and it's it'll take me less time to research. Oh, no problem, Captain Shield. It's been a little quiet, and we've got a resub, but I've been, I don't know, I've been a little more conscious about the missing, not missing, but like the drops in follower numbers. One really shouldn't matter that much, but
Combat detritus reprocessed.
I always sometimes
for a cleaner galaxy.
wonder what I can do differently sometimes. We've analyzed the debris in Strom, regenerative hull tissue 10%, amoeba breeding program 10%, and society research 10 points. Okay, just want to make sure that my science ships are being properly used. The Juris currently is not, so... Okay, so I've looked at what I have available here. There's a small argument for me to colonize these planets, but not one that I'm totally convinced is worth all of the effort. So what I'm going to do instead here with this science ship I'm going to survey the remaining systems in here. This is going to be something that I eventually sort of, settle on my own time, because I own this, and nobody else has access to it. So I'll be able to sort of take the choice planets on the time that I choose. I'm also a little curious what it'll cost to upgrade. So we're close to what we need, but I'm going to hold off on that for now. So Iris Hawthorne has gone to the same place Ebenezer has gone. And we don't have a particularly deep bench. I think what we'll do here is we'll promote Rowan Garland to the science labs. And then we'll make sure that the Juris gets the new recruit. So normally I would go for the age 32, but Maniacal is actually a pretty decent little ability to have. So we'll put him in the ship for now, just basically to be able to get a little more experience, and then we'll throw him into the lab when we get a chance. So just 1 second. I did notice the sap everyone, Captain Shield. It's very much appreciated. By the way, I do apologize for not being more up-to-date on the Rhizome Capital Twitter. That's just something that I found very hard to maintain. And I still want to... I still sort of want to like work with it. But I used to be able... So basically, when I was doing the previous sorry, how do I put this? When I was doing those previous updates, I would normally do what's the best way to say it? Like, I would be able to get a big queue of them set aside during like a lunch break or something like that. And it's become a little more difficult for me, just basically because I've got so much more to do at work. I've just found it particularly tricky to get some of these things queued up. So you'll notice occasionally I'll do things like I'll pause and I'll take a screenshot or something like that. Part of that is just me sort of prepping for for a future tweet if I can. But again, some of these things are a little hard to set up and a little hard to plan. So, I'm sorry, I'm just slightly distracted. I just have another window open, which I need to keep my mouse aside. Okay, there we go.
Upscaling complete.
I don't like too many distractions for this sort of stuff, but it's occasionally I wind up getting pulled away. You're wondering why you're... Yeah, so the big trick on this is just I'm conscious of sort of the narrative. I think the big thing that I can do with that account is to make it sort of a story of Rhizome Capital.
Research actualized.
Obviously, the plan that I had for like recorded advertisements and things like that, those didn't turn out. But what I can do is I can tell a little bit of a Rhizome Capital story through that Twitter account. And if I record the moments that happen inside here, then I can bring it back for those reasons. All right, a combination of different metals and ceramics that result in strong armor without sacrificing flexibility. So I can go for a coil gun, which will give me a little bit more firepower. I can go for additional mining output, but in this case here, I mean, 92 a turn is pretty decent. I really want to be turning these minerals into refined goods like consumer goods and alloys. No real reason for me to do the platform hull points yet. I don't really have any of them. Then there's the improved strike craft, which, you know, again, it's a nice little offensive capability, but probably it makes more sense if I'm going to spend that research to put it towards engineering research, especially because that's currently the laggard. The last one, though, is the coil gun, and I'm actually most inclined to put it there because it's one of the least expensive. So, although I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Rose on social research. And Bud Bloom's going to go on. So the reason I did that mostly was just this one requires a little bit more brain power. So in this case, this is just creating a little more equality between the time that those will finish off. There's no reason to enforce that, by the way. I just kind of want engineering to get a little bit of a kick in the pants. Okay, I really only have one option available if I'm going to continue down Discovery, which I want to do because, again, getting a 10% bonus to research speed is pretty spectacular, at least at this point, because I basically need to overcome the challenges I'm running into with my Empire Sprawl. So in this case, we'll gain additional research alternatives. That'll bring us on the way for additional experience caps, and then of course a nice boost to our civilian population with research, which is something I'm going to be considering when I upgrade these systems. Got 696, so I should be able to upgrade my fleet. The big question is whether or not I'm going to have some additional tech. I mean, in 20 months, so I think I'm going to sit on this for a while, actually. No point. I've got a nice big stockpile. I don't have any wars coming up, so... I am sort of debating about whether or not going into the Federation was the right plan. The one thing I will say is it has put me quite a bit closer to victory than I otherwise would have. And the funny thing is that I'm allied with one of the weakest systems, but because I'm in a Federation, that
is where you find it.
Pushed me over the edge. Fleet order finished. We have established a colony in Halvam Prime in the Halvam system, so that'll probably boost my sprawl. Nope, we've already got that, so... Good news there, I think that's the Gaia world. So Strom 5 frequently experiences massive and extremely violent storm systems in its atmosphere. Several dozen persistent storms are visible from orbit, with winds often reaching speeds in excess of 700 meters a second. The cause of these storms is not immediately apparent, as we have found nothing in the planet's climate model that would explain them. Our scientists are interested in studying this anomaly. So that's not really a choke point there, so it's kind of hard to justify expanding only to this area. And it looks like the Governor Jasmine Maple is no longer with us, so we will recruit a new one. And this is going to be for my main... this is going to be in sort of my main system. So one of the things I want to focus on, if I can, is technology. So even though this leader is 10 years older than my my current leader, first of all, it's Rose Maple, so related. In fact, I'll take that screenshot. But it's something that's going to be improving my ability to do research. So this is one of these points where, you know, when I have a default option, you know, what do I want when I don't care about the particular traits? I want the youngest person available because that'll lower my costs of getting rulers. What do I want when, you know, I've got a reasonably well-developed set of systems? Well, in that particular case, I would want I would want something to focus on what I think the strength of that system is. And in this particular case, the system is the focus is on technology, also potentially on additional unity, but I'm not entirely convinced that that's worth sort of battening down the hatches for. It is worth noting, though, that Yamal Prime and Gaul Prime actually have some fairly good arguments now for me to build science facilities, and Pytham, Akram, and Halvam might get consumer goods factories instead. A colossal impact crater hints that something big collided with the surface of this planet once. Let's research it. And I've got an idle construction ship, so let's build that up. That was why my sprawl went up. And then we will build this additional starbase, because this is the real reason for me doing this expansion. One, so I can get the living metal even if I can't develop it, but two, so I can get some of that sweet society research. I could have sworn the traders were going to come back to me. Actually, I am a little curious on something. So I am fond of doing Stellaris, but I'm curious if that's the consensus on Monday Grand Strategy. Is Stellaris something that people enjoy watching, or would it be better to have a little more variety? So something like Crusader Kings. I will admit I'm actually quite happy with the relationship with Paradox right now, so I would kind of like to focus towards that. But I am also a little curious if these streams wind up being a little more focused on things that I'm personally interested in rather than the audience. So I'm a little curious how you guys... I mean, again, I don't necessarily like being... I don't necessarily want to like focus test every single choice that I make on the stream, but I am a little curious what people think of these games. A large mineral-rich asteroid collided with Strom 8 at some point during the previous 1,000 years, in what must have been a major impact event. An abundance of minerals can now be found on the planet in the vicinity of the impact crater, so an additional 3 minerals. And in this case, I'm looking for somebody to take care of the Gaia world. So lower cost for the eager leader is not bad. In this case, it's age 31. I don't really need to worry about crime on the Paradise planet. I could also say Huckleberry Oak with the experience gain. In this case, a 15-year difference. I have a feeling that this is, first of all, going to cost me less, and then number 2, they'll just have more time in which they can gain experience. So in this case, I think Iris Life will be the governor of the new colony. Thank you very much for the host, Captain Shield. You enjoy watching? It's relaxing? Okay, that's good to know. Obviously,
Upscaling complete.
I do stuff like, surviving Mars and that too with a specific relaxation focus, but it's kind of good to know how people think about these things. Shareholder, we greet you. We are operators of Rocket Industrial Enterprise, a member of the Caravanserai Caravan Coalition. We travel the stars, and our eyes catch all that glows. We gather, and we trade. We pass through your space in peace, only to buy, to sell. We'll offer you good deals, many things. We will speak again before we leave. You should call us. The Caravanserai Coalition will answer. Greetings, Caravaneers. Look at your credit silos, shareholder, full to bursting. Please let us lighten them. Let us assist. What can you offer us? We have ore, rich, luminous ore, torn right from the stone, sparkling minerals for the Rhizome capital. We hunger, we thirst. Grant us 1,000 food, and we shall supply your builders, your makers, with 500 minerals. Not really worth it. My main justification for this is I have less food, and I'm generating less a month than I am minerals. So, not interested. Yeah, well, obviously the plant one was a bit of a a one-off. Ouroboros. System sensors indicate that the extra-dimensional exploration vessel Kotao exited FTL abruptly in the outskirts of the Siplum system, colliding head-on with an orbital comet. The collision was disastrous enough to kill everyone on board and has sent the remaining wreckage spiraling in towards the Siplum pulsar. It would appear that the comet, not the pulsar, was responsible for the Kotalo's demise, and in our effort to warn them of their fate, we seem to have caused it. Both wrecks now haunt the Siplum pulsar. Oops. This system has now become infinitely more attractive to colonize. This guy doesn't have any orders. Let's build that starbase. Oh, and Yamal has got... So two things have happened. One, we've got the additional pop to build the new building. I think in this case it has to be civilian industry, as much as I don't want it to be. Actually, hang on. So Yamal is in Rhizome capital, so I'm actually going to build for the future. And with that in mind, I'm going... Do I have any research facilities? No, so I'm actually going to create I'm going to create a deficit in terms of consumer goods, but that's going to be because I want to focus on... I sort of want to focus on tech. One thing I might ultimately do is I might transfer some of these facilities onto these other worlds so that the sort of my technological hub can be focused in here. But for the time being, let's say research labs. And while we're building that, I'm going to say, who do I want to put on... Okay, so they're already farming. Python's already got robot assembly. So it looks like Akram could deal with some robots, as could Halvam. Although Halvam doesn't really have anything to... doesn't really have any infrastructure. So let's start by building a city district there. In fact, let's build 2 for good measure. We've got tons of space for all sorts of goodies. But in this particular case, there's no room for robots right now. So what I'll do instead... In fact, there's a pretty good argument for me not to have any robots on here because it's a Gaia world and everybody loves it. So let's move our robot to Akram, which has some space for those people. So my unemployed robot can go to... There we go. So that's one of the reasons why I've kept that robot facility open there. It's mostly so I can spread out to my existing colonies. And what that's also given me is the opportunity to upgrade the ship shelter. So we've already got civilian industries down. We've got enough housing. We've got amenities. I might have to go for another civilian industries. Thing is, this is a really good planet for energy. Python should be the one that's... So in one sense, corporate culture site makes sense because I really need to get my Unity up. Civilian industries make sense because I need to get myself out of the civilian industry deficit. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna do that. I don't feel good about it, but... This is the thing that makes the patch associated with Megacorps so interesting, is that Stellaris was great. It's always been great, but especially if you take a look at things like how the game played. So the neat thing about Paradox games is because if you go into the beta branches, they have basically everything available to you to take a look at over, over the life of the product. If you take a look at what the game was in like version 1.0 compared to what it is today, it's really, really different. So I think one of the things that you can sometimes only appreciate about Stellaris or any of the Paradox games once you've seen how once you've seen how the game develops. The game used to be sort of like one note in terms of the military focus, and you'd try and produce as many minerals as possible until your energy needs got to a point where you needed to start investing in that in order to sort of keep everything maintained. And what's really neat here is that even though Stellaris really is a war game, like in the end, Crusader Kings, Hearts of Iron, Europa Universalis, all these things using the Clausewitz engine, at their heart are going to be like a war game. However strictly you want to define war game, obviously. And that's just because they're sort of built with that model in mind, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it does mean that, let's say you've got Hearts of Iron 4, which is about World War II. So if you don't have the World War, then it's you don't have the experience, basically. That one's pretty much the hardest lean into the war game that you can get. And Stellaris, if you think about the concept, it's about sort of that first step out into the bigger world, and you've got this exploration, and you've got that first science ship. And like obviously people found ways around it, so they'd send like military fleets out to explore as quickly as possible. So they made changes to make sure that you have that experience of, having that one ship that's moving slowly throughout the galaxy. Just kind of like Civilization, and you have that first settler. If Hidden Citizen is talking about learning Civilization. So what's neat about Stellaris is that because the game again is about, it's not just about smashing ships together like army men. It's about a society in space and how things develop, what kind of a government you have, how people get along. What's been really interesting about Megacorps is to see how they have made managing all these different elements of an economy interesting. Like, obviously there are I think this is kind of what makes games like this so interesting, is that there's this list of things that I want to do to kick everyone's ass, but the game won't let me do those, because if I do that, my economy is going to fall apart and I'm not going to be able to sustain the ass kicking. And so I need to try and exercise a little bit of foresight in terms of how I'm navigating this space in order to be able to remain competitive and make sure that I don't just last for the next 5 years, but I last for the next 50 and the next 500. And this is, I think, one thing, out of all of the patches, as much as, like, Utopia is kind of, the consensus is built around that's like the must-have DLC. But I really feel, even with something like Apocalypse, I feel like Megacorps has made me aware of the level of depth that was added in the patch. Like, I feel like Megacorps maybe, like, I think it's a well-regarded patch so far as I can tell, but I don't quite feel like it gets enough credit in terms of in terms of what it added. I like the fact that I'm not able to just steamroll over things, and that I need to make some judgments in terms of, what it might be like to run a society. Like, even if you play, some terrible tyrant or something like that, you need to make sure that people don't, like, overthrow you. And I feel like that's been really fleshed out in terms of this game, so. We've discovered the remnants of a half-finished Karabnar space habitat in close orbit around Bagal 3 inside our borders. Evidently, at some point, Karabnar marauders attempted to establish a permanent presence in the Bagal system, but for whatever reason, this endeavor was abandoned. Due to its close proximity to Bagal 3, The unfinished habitat eluded detection during our initial survey of the system. I'm trying to find... Oh, it's right here. It's a little more than a dense collection of space junk at this point, but there is a lot of valuable minerals among the wreckage that could be salvaged. This is another thing that's sort of interesting. So another sort of... I don't know if it's a defining feature, but it's definitely a very regular feature of Paradox games is the asymmetry inside of them. So, you know, if you start as the city-state of Ulm in Europa Universalis 4, you are simply not going to be able to expect to do the same things from the start as the Ottoman Empire. And if you feel that that's unfair, too bad. You know, that is not what that game is. If you were to have sort of a grand historical game like Civilization. So what's interesting about Civilization, although they do have different strengths in different eras, one of the ideas behind Civilization is that, you know, you could have ancient Egypt, and ancient Egypt would remain a competitive power into the modern day. And what's neat about Europa Universalis and other Paradox games is that they sort of accept a little bit more that there were specific historical reasons why Egypt did not last as the, you know, the empire that we know. It's a little bit harder to do in a space game like this because you don't have history to lean back on. So what's sort of interesting is that somebody might say it's like, oh man, I got up beside the, you know, you know, the Marauders, that's really bad. And that's true. Like, I am dreading the moment that the Great Khan shows up, because that's gonna be bruising. Like, they are 2 systems away from my capital. There's no way that I'm gonna be able to withstand it. But I am getting all of these little benefits beside myself. So in this case, the game hasn't been, you know, they don't sort of neuter everything. They don't make it so that you, you know, every like, I don't know, all starts are equidistant from some Marauder sector or something like that. Like, you can have good starts and you can have bad starts. But what they've done instead is they've sort of said is like, you know what, you got dealt a bad hand, but what we're going to do is we're going to give you a set of things that are sort of unique to being in close proximity to the Marauders, and it's up to you to decide how you use those to your advantage to deal with the problem that comes up. So, after double and triple checking the navigational drive's coordinates, we have been forced to conclude that the Mardak Val's paradisical planet should have been where the Mardak Val's paradisical planet should have been are only the desolate plains of a barren world. Though we cannot eliminate the possibility that Mardak's idea of paradise was wildly different from our own, the bomb-scarred surface of Untara 3 tells a different story. The ship's captain and crew have not taken the disappointment lightly. So we can say this cannot be. Quadruple check the coordinates. Grasping at
Situation
straws.
log revised.
So I've gotten this once before, but I don't know if the game forces the, I don't know if the game forces any particular outcomes. Oh, the music's getting exciting. This was the apocalypse music.
Market outlier identified.
We briefly detected some unusual energy readings emanating from this planet. It might have been a glitch in our systems, or it could be a sign of something more. So I pretty much always research anomalies. There is a little bit of an argument in terms of whether or not you get something like a level 6 anomaly when the...
A system has been surveyed.
Uh-oh. In the years that follow, there are reported sightings of an admiral across corporate space and beyond. When a celebrated leader dies, this kind of thing is not unknown, of course, but they had become a kind of legend since the Sergei rendezvous. But we can't be sure. You can say, we may never know, or we can't be sure. So in this case, this was the admiral who we encountered in the Horizon Signal event. Just bear with me one second, guys. So I don't have any admirals at the moment, but I'll leave it for now. So we'll say we may never know, because that's the appropriate response to the legend. Now, I'm of two minds about whether or not I should have an admiral on here. I was talking about anomalies, but I'll talk about the admiral. So one of the things, Stellaris does give you a reason to have an admiral in a fleet, even if you don't think you're going to be using that fleet. It's because while an admiral sits in the fleet, I don't know if they gain experience, but they can definitely get the fleet logistician trait just by being there. So
Special project actualized.
that's not nothing. That's actually a reasonably good benefit to have, especially if you're resource constrained. Now, I'm not really, because I can always buy things and I can get a discount because of the galactic market. But I think I mean, they're all in their 40s. Yeah, it is faster. I think I am actually going to hire this one. If it wasn't speed, I might have reconsidered. All right, we finally uncovered Mardak Val's secret. It was when a probe destined for the planet's surface bounced off its atmosphere that the crew began to suspect that Peridea was not what it seemed. Closer studies revealed that what looked like a planet's surface was in fact an energy shield, upon which a barren world's texture was projected, and hidden below it a lush Gaia planet reminiscent of the Mardak's prophecies. But that isn't all. As the crew deactivated the shield, they discovered a peaceful Stone Age civilization consisting of a symbiotic union between mammals and fungi who live in crude huts, oblivious to the outside world. The nightmarish vessels live on only as mythical beings in their legends. Mardak Val live, or that is one pretty planet. We're always looking for people to sell things to, so. That might be the effect of Alex the Rambler. Or it could be other people, so now is not a bad time. Oh, you know what? It's probably... Okay, there's some lovely people who are hosting me right now. I didn't get a formal raid, but I would like to give some credit
Upscaling
to...
complete.
Yes, actually, it's not a bad time for me to give some credit to some people here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try and get... Like I said, I'm going to try and get a little bit better at keeping the action going. So I'm going to build some research stations here first and then follow up with mining stations. But there are a few people who are, well, there's a Rambler host, but there's also somebody else who, you know, Eyes of Sid. So I'm going to give a quick roll call. Unfortunately, I have an event, so, but I need to get through this pretty quickly. So it's quite a few people hosting us right now, and I want to give credit where credit's due. Amber Ray, the Rambler 146, Starbright Knight, Custom Games, Nubasaur 42, Unknown Brigade, Mr. Franz, Flofi, The Sleepbringer, Octavian Zero, Inferno Fowler, Chaotic Tambris, Kaylee Cakes, and Captain Shield 616. And I believe Octavian Zero just recently hosted me. So Alex the Rambler is a great Grand Strategy streamer, probably best known for Hearts of Iron 4, but if he has Stellaris... Oh no, of course he has Stellaris, because he's on the YouTuber War. So if you harass Rambler to play Stellaris with me, I would happily play Stellaris with him. But on top of that, Octavian Zero, who the Eyes of Sin introduced me to and provides the emotes for, and is just generally a really stand-up guy and incredibly generous with his hosts, put me in here. Now, I know I'm not for everyone, so you don't get too excited about those numbers. They're going to fall down pretty quickly, but thank you to all of those people, because, again, it is hard to get noticed, and especially because I am a little bit of a niche choice. It does help to have the support. You know, if you like my stuff, I'd love it if you'd come back. But if I'm not your cup of tea, that's fine. I am no stranger to people going away. So, but please do give him my thanks, Eyes of Sin. I actually didn't have him on my auto hosts, so I've rectified that. We've traced the unusual electromagnetic radiation emanating from Strom 1 to a secret subterranean bunker hiding a megacomputer the size of a battleship. Our researchers suspect that it may have been there for several thousand years, hard at work solving a single, very complex problem, the nature of which still eludes us. When the crew attempted to interact with the computer, they discovered that the facility, which has appeared both abandoned and unguarded, was in fact operated by security AI, the highest purpose of which seems to be frying its visitors alive. As the crew defeated the AI, it broadcasted a message to an unknown recipient. So we can scrap the mega computer for parts. Now this is a huge change that they made. So I think you used to just get minerals off of this. This will give you 100 alloys, which obviously I'm doing okay at generating. But to be able to get 50 of these rare materials that I can't get anywhere else, the rare crystals, as well as the 50 motes, that is very tempting to do. We can use it to boost our own research. Now that's basically going to give me 10 years of a 10% bonus to engineering research. Or we can say let it continue its mysterious calculations. We'd better not disturb it. Whatever problem the computer is trying to solve, it seems important. Now, of course, Rhizome Capital does not just simply let capital resources lie unused. So what I am going to do is I'm going to hit use it to boost our own research. This requires that we keep the AI maintaining the facility offline and will cause the computer breakdown within the foreseeable future. So don't get it forever, but it will give me a little something to work with. But well, the bigger one for me would be the fact that I've been sitting on these volatile motes until I get at least 80, and the reason for that is what I can do now. I think Yamal's gonna get a research facility. I'm definitely gonna need to do some, oh, did I already put a research facility? I guess I can't put another one down. No, that doesn't make sense. So it's taken me, since I built this mining, where is it? So this mine for motes, it's basically taken me the entire stream to get to a point where I'm able to take those motes and do these upgrades. And I'm only going to have enough to keep it going, 2 of these going. Now, I'm fine with that. In fact, I'll do these upgrades now. I'm lacking 6 mo. Oh! I pretty severely miscalculated that then. But yeah, so the problem is that so if you do the upgrade right away, you're going to minimize your ability to collect more of those resources. So in this particular case, scrapping the computer, I mean, again, you get a fixed 10 years of percent-based research bonus, and if you're not generating that much engineering, it doesn't actually get you that much. But basically, the benefit to that one is if you can get that down payment for that special building, what that means is that you can translate. So the reason why I got those motes was not so I can have the motes. I got those motes so that I could basically produce a ridiculous number of alloys. So if I can get a down payment on that upgrade, that means that I'm able to convert that monthly resource into sort of the output that I want faster. And so in that sense, scrapping the computer makes a lot more sense. The really important thing, it's actually, if you think about it this way, this is a trade-off that we face in terms of non-renewable resources. So we know that there is a fixed amount of oil in the world. Now, there is obviously going to be more oil. Like, if you go on a millions of years timescale, there's clearly going to be more oil. But within, the practical time where we'll use these resources, there is a fixed amount that we have. And obviously our demand for it is growing right now. And so in terms of economic study of resources, there is actually the study of the use of renewable resources and non-renewable resources. part of having a non-renewable resource is figuring out sort of a schedule of consumption such that you are able to get the benefit of it while also recognizing that it's not going to be there forever. So I'd put it to you this way, like if we could find a way to mine or to drill out and exploit every last drop of oil and it would never be there ever again. But what we did was we transformed it into another form of energy that was sustainable. Obviously, it would make sense to consume all of those resources and put them, put them towards that generation of a renewable source. And then, of course, the really terrible use for it would be is to take all the oil in the world, consume it in one period, and have nothing in the future. It's a little bit like, having a savings account or something like that. So there's whole branches of study around that, but essentially that trade-off has been stylized inside this game here, which is that, if there are definitely projects that I can do that are more appealing than generating 10% extra engineering research over 10 years. There can be times where putting that, getting the resources I need to construct something very cool in the present day actually makes a lot more sense than sort of the long-term solution. So I do not own a car. I have owned a car, but I do not presently have one. I tend to walk everywhere. Coil guns are a more powerful version of the early mass drivers, using electromagnetic coils to rapidly accelerate projectiles towards targets. I'm going to wait until the UV lasers are done researching before I do the upgrade. Now, droids is very tempting because I believe droid workers can do specialist jobs, and that's a bit of a game changer as far as my worker distribution. My alternatives here would be crystal-infused plating, which is kind of cool. Also super solid materials, which will give me a 20% bonus to engineering. Obviously engineering is still my laggard, so that is a meaningful upgrade. But in this case here, I think the ability to have a more effective workforce really does make all the difference. So in this case, I will do droid workers. Yeah, well, the one thing I do notice about the city that I live in right now is that it is really spread out compared to Vancouver. We are getting sort of a light rail system coming in, although it's coming in quite slowly. I moved here about a little over 2 years ago, and they were saying how it'd be coming online soon. Soon is always on the horizon. But yeah, I'm, the one drawback here is that it's been around minus 20 Celsius for the last few days, so obviously it is quite difficult to walk out in that temperature, although I have noticed over time I've gotten a little bit better with the cold, so there have been a couple of times when it's minus 20 and I've been able to kind of go out and walk.
Upscaling complete.
Because whether, sometimes it's the difference between... if there's like a really heavy wind, that's just miserable to be out in. And then if there's if it's maybe a bit of a calmer day, if it's just cold but it's not like super windy, it's a bit manageable if you bundle up. Several plants native to Halvam Prime, where we recently established a colony, exude copious amounts of pollen with an astounding chemical complexity. A special research project has been prepared for further study of this flora. I have a feeling that people are getting high on this planet. All right. Not that Rhizome Capital has a particular problem with that. They just want to make sure that they get their piece of the pie. You know what? We'll leave that there. But what we will do is we will throw this research project to the top of the queue. We've got 1,000 days to deal with it, so we've got plenty of time still, but... Just take a quick look. So floral study's good. Phase shift freeze. Oh, that's right. I still need to deal with the veil. And I don't have any real science ships available in that area, so I need to start thinking about where I'm going to do all this. Obviously, these are where the captives are. The funny thing is that apparently there's no penalty for being really slow in rescuing these guys, and I plan to exploit that to the fullest.
Upscaling complete.
And then we've sort of been neglecting the worm and waiting, but that's because it hasn't been giving us anything. So, big news. The naval capacity is back in back in shape. So I believe that actually translates into an improvement to my consumer goods as well as the others. But it also means that I'm going to be able to build some more ships, which is good news. So in addition to the fact that I do want to be building up my capacity in terms of my, my different, my star bases and such, I am also a little conscious of the fact that there's technologies that will allow me to expand my my might. So, as extrasolar expeditions become more common, it is important to provide planet-side relief for returning fleets. Okay. There is a lot going on here. So let's say I'm gonna skip over the highlighted ones that I've already researched, because of course I'll have these available at any time. So subterranean colonization, I don't believe any of my blockers. Okay, so there's one deep sinkhole which is keeping me from being able to build out my max districts. I could get an additional generator district out of it. Of course, I have got I've got a lot of people who are who can still kind of come onto this planet. So no major reason for me to work on that yet, although I can get rid of the quicksand basin, so I'll do that right now. What about these other? I don't think the rest of these planets are able to deal with sinkholes, so it's hard for me to justify. I'll get rid of that active volcano. That's gonna get rid of two other districts. So it's really hard for me, again, even though this is a relatively inexpensive blocker. What I'm giving up is bonuses to administrative capacity or starbase capacity. Also, I've got ocean ecology management. I didn't properly address that, so let me just get back to Yamal. So we've got one toxic kelp. This will give me 3 additional generator districts. Of course, it's worth remembering that I can I'll only get 1 max district out of this. Eventually, once everything is done, I'll get additional 3 districts. When I get my next tradition, by the way, we'll talk a little bit about some ways that we can improve that. I feel like, okay, so 2 planets with toxic kelp. Ooh, 4. Okay, so in this example here, we can actually unlock quite a bit of productive capacity by getting rid of toxic kelp, more than I thought we could. So under normal circumstances, I would actually say that for 3522, so 20 months of research, ocean ecology management would be the obvious choice. Now, stellar expansion, starbase capacity +2, that will help me with my fleet cap, which indirectly is a way to help me with my alloys and my consumer goods, because I won't be hitting that cap, and of course I'll be able to put the hurt on my rival if it comes down to that. But the big one right now is additional administrative capacity. So for 31 months, and I don't have anybody who specializes in this research, basically in 31 months, I'm going to finally be able to roll back some of that sprawl. So right now we're at 161, our capacity is 70. So adding another 50 won't bring us to the limit, but it will definitely pull us back from this, this really, really troublesome situation that we found ourselves in. So basically, we're going to start seeing some reductions in terms of the costs for technology and tradition. And the bonus here is that because we've put so much planning into being able to sort of overcome these higher costs, this is going to translate into sort of overdrive as far as our intellectual capabilities are concerned. So even though this is the more expensive option, compared to the tile blockers, this is a huge bonus in terms of the reduction of some penalties that I'm getting, and that's felt across the board. So what you can think of this research being is essentially for free. It's like I'm building additional Unity and research centers on all my planets. So with that in mind, this is definitely the most sensible one for me to go for. It also makes sense that I put my level 5 scientist on it. So, does this game have a decent tutorial, Trinkasap asks. Welcome, by the way. I would say yes. So there's one thing to keep in mind about... okay, so Domi has a different opinion than I do, so keep that in mind, Trinkasap. Also, it's maybe worth mentioning at this point that Paradox did give me a copy of both the original Stellaris game as well as the DLC, so... You know, I like to think that I am more expensive than being given free games, but maybe keep that in mind if you're making a buying decision off of what I said. Out of all of the Paradox games, I think this game has the best tutorial out of the Paradox games. But with that in mind, I don't know if you are at all familiar with some of the other games that they make, like Crusader Kings or Europa Universalis or that. The trade-off in a Paradox game is this. Compared to an average game, and we can include Civilization inside this, obviously first-person shooters are a little bit easier to pick up, but, you know, Civilization to Wolfenstein,
Upscaling
most of the
complete.
games you can kind of get in one sitting, and you're going to develop that experience over time. So FTL, you may not beat the game on your first sitting, but you sort of have an idea of how FTL works when you first play it.
Research actualized.
In terms of Paradox games, you actually spend a lot of time learning them. But in exchange for spending the time learning them, you get quite literally hundreds of hours of gameplay out of it. So to give you an example of this Paradox games that I have, Crusader Kings 2 I have 659 hours in. Europa Universalis 4 I have 314 hours in. Stellaris I have 497 hours in. And the last one would be Hearts of Iron 4, which is here somewhere. I think that one I've got the least time in. 189 hours. So this is it. Like because these games are very deep and they have a very broad sort of set of systems, they're not necessarily easy to learn, but Stellaris is actually the one that has the let's see if I can put this on full.
Tutorial missions and tips are enabled.
Oh, cool. So the nice thing about Stellaris is it's the only Paradox game which has actually got a fully
Building a
voiced...
star empire can be a daunting task. To help get things started, I will be providing instructional missions that cover the basic steps necessary to establish ourselves as a successful interstellar power.
Okay, so I'll put it to you this way, Trinkasap. These Paradox RTSs are very unique among RTSs. So, like, this is not like StarCraft where really timing is... Like, if you think about it, time is a resource in StarCraft, because if you can't issue your orders in a timely fashion, you're going to be at a disadvantage. Your opponent is going to be able to produce more and you'll be at a loss. You'll notice that in this game I slow it down and I pause it lots of times to sort of talk about what the next 2 or 3 steps are going to be. So what the tutorial will do, I won't take you through the whole thing because I've been through this a couple of times, but first mission is to fully survey a neighboring star system. I've added it as an entry to the situation log. To access it, click on the situation log button in the left section of the top bar and press F2.
The situation log displays a list of all currently available special projects and various other points of interest. New items will likely appear as we begin exploring the galaxy.
So in this case, it wants me to just take my science ship and go and, take a look at a system that I don't have before. Now, I have not played a lot of EVE Online, but from what I understand, a lot of the appeal of EVE Online is sort of this very rich sort of game world.
Tutorial missions and tips are disabled. As our empire grows, new colonies will automatically be organized.
Sorry about that. There's lots of these rich systems, and you can kind of do a lot of... I think you can sort of like program your ships to sort of run and do some mining on your own for you. So you'll probably be really interested in Stellaris because of the new DLC that came out called Megacorps. So these resources here, consumer goods and alloys, didn't exist before this new patch. And essentially what they've done is they took the economy from basically being money and material goods and then food for your population. And they've actually turned it so mineral is sort of this base material, and then you have refined goods in the form of consumer goods and alloys. And so you actually have a lot of management in terms of your internal economy, as well as trying to manage these fleets and such. So I'd say the things that will appeal to you the most about Stellaris will actually be that level of depth, which is probably comparable to what you're getting outside of Eve, or what you're getting out of Eve. The drawback is going to be that Stellaris does, even though it is, I think, the most accessible of all of the Paradox grand strategy games, Paradox is I think they're pretty aware of the fact that their games generally demand a little bit more of their players than others. And again, I say this knowing that you will play a game that is already pretty hardcore by most standards. Again, I haven't really played Eve, so I can't speak with authority on that. So I think as long as you're willing to sort of stick to your guns on that one, as long as you're willing to put the investment of time in it, for me, like, these are the things that just constantly reward continued play, because there's so much to do. I'll actually, one thing I'm going to get this research done. I'm just going to take a quick second outside of the game to show you guys a little bit. Some of you have seen this before, but I think this is going to give you a good idea in terms of what you're in store for with Stellaris. It's actually better than some of the gameplay, but I'll jump into that. I'll back into that in a second. So UV lasers, ultraviolet lasers are an updated and more powerful version of their blue predecessors. Accurate and destructive, these weapons are capable of inflicting great damage. So let's pick... I mean, I can kind of punt and just go for the mining lasers to be done with them. Energy Nexus, I haven't already used the base building, so there's no reason for me to upgrade that there. I always like more tech, and then Plasma Thrower is actually not a bad... I think I'm gonna... I hate that I'm doing this, but I am gonna punt and get the mining drone laser. So I'm just gonna exit to the menu for a quick second to give you an idea of how much I like this game. So the game by default gives you these systems here. The Blorg commonality is one of the... It was actually the one that Martin Anward, sort of the main sort of lead on the game, sort of made during one of the development streams. If you have some of the DLC, the Trebid homolog is the this AI. This came with Synthetic Dawn. So basically, there's a bunch of little species that have been developed by the game designers. They all have their different characteristics, and they all have their own little backstories. But those of you who've been watching the stream for a while know that I like making a new species each time. So for instance, we've got the Oklar citizen state. And in this case, this was "Have you done your part?" Originally a slogan designed to sell consumer goods 2 decades into a war that engulfed Glira. It was adopted by Eldrig Den Badir to unite his people to press on in the Great War. While the borders did not change, the Oklari united behind his leadership until he was the world president in all but name. Declining to serve a second term, he was followed by his 2 sons. Under their rulership, the Oklar have finally taken to the stars. But as the Great War recedes into memory, can society's martial traditions be held by a mere advertising slogan? So this had a couple of interests because I was going to allow for the possibility that this turned into a more autocratic society, but as it turned out, the Den Badir family died and it stayed as a citizen republic. But obviously this is a little more militarist. This is actually based off of the Johnny Walker slogan and a couple of things that I was reading about sort of early democracies. But this one, intelligent, deviance, wasteful, and adaptive. I chose deviance because I wanted the possibility that these people wouldn't necessarily carry on with their same sort of ideals. In this case, they're militarists and fanatic materialists. And again, it's a citizens' republic, a militaristic one, but one that could potentially turn into a more authoritarian system. Then when Synthetic Dawn came out, we had the Techaris multi-system. Now, in this game, there are spiritualist species that don't like AIs. They sort of think they're these soulless husks. And in this case, these are driven assimilators, so think of the Borg and rock breakers. And in this case, on the planet known as the planet known as 01 was home to a monastic order known as the Savelli, dedicating themselves to move beyond the pursuit of transitory knowledge and to learn truths eternal. To that end, they fashioned a servitor race dedicated to the accumulation and caretaking of transitory knowledge in all of its forms. The Savelli passed beyond this realm, and their servitors, the Techaris, were left to fulfill their mandate. Time passed, 01 was covered in ice, and the caretaker finally understood its purpose and went out into space to account for and incorporate all organic life. Now, this particular species actually has a servant species below it, and it's at least in the story, it's the reanimated bodies of the spiritualist society that died. So the idea was that they wanted to be sort of this focus only on spirituality, and they built machines to serve them in that regard. They died, and the AI essentially figured out that it was their job to expand out and incorporate everything into its catalog, including raising these spiritual creatures. The Eyes of Sin, who's still in chat, asked about this one. She wanted to do a plant-based people, so the Mandasura. This is a theocratic monarchy. In this case, they're xenophobic, militarists, and spiritualists. They're fleeting, thrifty, and conservationists. Obviously, these might have meanings inside of the game that aren't obvious, but in this case, one of the galaxy's greatest paradoxes is why a planet as beautiful as Laborius Primus should be inhabited by a species so utterly indifferent, indeed hostile to anyone seeking to witness it. The Mandasura are as beautiful as their homeworld, and yet the only reliable account of the species or planet is the savagery with which they protected this gem. The Mandasura seem only concerned with inward perfection during their reportedly short lives. However, the galaxy may finally be able to bear witness to these enigmatic creatures, as reports from Laborius Primus indicate that the Mandasuran ships are exploring their system. The Mandasura may finally be prepared to make their debut. And then, because Megacorps introduced the idea of opening branches, we're currently playing Rhizome Capital, which is a corporation with brand loyalty and franchising. They're egalitarian, xenophilic, and materialist. And Rhizome Capital is pleased to announce that it has successfully completed its first round of seed capital. Our plants are already running at full capacity, getting ready to offer you the finest goods and services the galaxy has to offer. Tax season got you down? Our bean counters at Deloitte are licensed in all jurisdictions and legal systems. Need help with housework? Rhizome Robotics solar-powered photosynthetic assistants are ready to attend to your every need. Under the sage guidance of Ebenezer Hawthorne, we'll make you green. Rhizome Capital. Leaf growth to the experts. So, it's I don't really have an opinion one way or the other, Domi. I usually pick my stats to be consistent with the with sort of the idea that I have in my mind. So obviously the one from the Eyes of Sin was based on myths like Diana and things like that. But basically, to answer Trinkasnap's question in there, like, the thing that's great about this is obviously part of the fun to me. Whenever we start a new game of Stellaris, a lot of it does really tend to be this sitting down and this this process of like, what story do I want to tell? Like, what science fiction story am I going to put out there today? And to me, part of the experience really is finding a way to sort of express myself in terms of these species. So I think, for my part, this game is even partly a role-playing game, not even necessarily in the sense of it, obviously there's, in one sense, this thing is strategy and I'm going out and conquering the universe, but they really sort of set everything up so that you can basically do all of science fiction. If there's something that you're excited by in terms of science fiction stories, chances are you're able to realize it inside of the game. And to me, I find that very exciting. I really don't know of any other game like this. So I think it's not a game for everyone. I need to admit that. But I do think that it's a game that if you're willing to put the time inside of it, even if they didn't put as many sort of updates as they do, I really do think that it's a game that I have been able to express myself and express some of these ideas through my choice of species in a way that I just simply haven't been able to in some of the other games. How's the combat? It varies, Trinkasnap. It's improved over time. They put out a DLC called Apocalypse that really worked on that. Now there is, I think in a lot of Paradox games, there is a tendency to have sort of this blob strategy. One of the ways that they've gotten past that is that you'll notice that I've got my, the territory that I have is sort of in this, this big green area. So one of the drawbacks is of a blob strategy would be if I'm attacked, say, here, and then there were to be somebody
Potential market survey completed.
to attack at this side. I'm just going to read this event. Our science officer has found an anomaly. It will require extensive probing, but could garner a substantial find. So if I blob up, I'm not going to be able to get my fleets to where they need to be on time. There are alternative modes of transport, so there is, this is an L gate here. You have to research to unlock these. They actually open up a pretty important little bit of real estate, but they do require quite a bit of effort to put together. And then I don't think we have any wormholes in this area, but that's another form of sort of fast transport. So the combat is definitely developed to a point where sort of logistics and your ability to sort of move efficiently, either anticipating an enemy's moves or to be able to get your, well, I mean, that's what logistics is, getting your resources to where they need to be. It's become richer over time. And then the other thing that I will say, I don't use this a lot because I tend to play against the AI. But the way that this sort of works here is you have I don't know if you've ever played like Endless Space, but if you have, I mean, it's not like Endless Space has sort of innovated the system, but basically it's a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors game. So I have UV lasers, they're particularly powerful, but they have minuses against shield damage and bonuses against armor. So if my opponent knows that I've gone heavy on lasers, they might boost up their shields. Of course, I've also got a small coil gun, which does bonuses towards shield damage and minuses towards armor damage. And so in this sense, like obviously, if you were to go back and play the original patch of Stellaris, I wouldn't necessarily say that the combat was one of the most deep experiences that you've had. When you're playing against the AI, I'm not entirely sure that you're going to find it the most challenging experience unless you bump up the difficulty levels of the game. But on the flip side, especially in multiplayer, there's opportunity for... There's definitely opportunities to exploit your opponent's laziness. So for instance, if I were to be doing sort of the ship designs that I have right now, I'll admit I'm not necessarily very good at this design game. I'm not very good at being able to outsmart my opponents in terms of, you know, coming up with really smart formations or something along those lines. But what I do tend to do is I tend to have a very strong economy, and so I just simply beat them through sheer force. It's almost like, you know, the Americans in World War II. Like there's always 5 tanks if the Tiger can take out another 4. So Trinkasap says, one of the things you like about EVE is that warfare can be fought on several fronts, weaponizing economics, wars of attrition, for example. Yep, that's absolutely in this game. So to give you an example of where that might come into play, I currently have this tile with moats. So I've built I have access to this resource. What these moats allow me to do is they allow me to upgrade my, oops, this is the wrong system. So what I've done here is the headquarters planet for Rhizome Capital. I had what was basically an alloy foundry. So again, this is stuff that they've added in the new patch, but basically I've got these specialist workers who can, wait, where are you?
Special project actualized.
Maybe they're regular workers. Let me just read this item here. On closer examination, the plant's native to Cirrus. Thank you very much for that follow. I really appreciate that. The plants native to Halvum Prime turn out to be rather dull. Some excrete pollen that have a mild stimulating effect, and they are likely to have a propensity for rapid genetic change, hardly impressive enough to warrant adopting as a strategic or luxury resource. So we gained some society research for that. Those were the plants that we were examining before. My science ship should already be on its way back, but this one's just kind of hanging out. Originally, I wanted to sell that to someone, but apparently they never came back. So anyways, to answering your question, well, the highest difficulties, it's more that it gets a bonus towards certain production, Domi. But yeah, so, I mean, again, it depends. I'm not that well educated in terms of how it works, but especially in Megacorps, they've really emphasized
Upscaling
scarcity.
complete.
So the fact here is that I have these volatile motes. They are going to allow me to build these more advanced alloy foundries. So instead of generating up to 6 alloys for each worker, they're now going to generate 15 alloys. And you'll notice if I take a look at all the neighboring systems, nobody else has these motes. It's not just that they don't have the technology to extract them, they just simply don't have them. Oh, actually, sorry, I'm wrong. Tatanga has got them, but they're not exploiting them at the moment. I might actually go to war with them over this. So in this particular case here, my workforce is more efficient at generating alloys, and alloys are required to build ships. So part of this is a little bit about taking certain choke points. Definitely you want to deny your opponent strategic resources, and they've definitely developed that quite a bit more in this particular patch. And there are other ways. So if, let's say I had a monopoly on all the moats, there are other ways of getting moats. You can actually build these kinds of buildings inside here to generate moats. But the catch is, of course, that building could have been used to, say, refine moats into alloys, or it could be used to generate more unity, or I could maybe make another research lab so that I'd be able to, keep that technological advantage that I want to retain. So in my opinion,
Upscaling
especially on
complete.
this patch, they've definitely expanded out the economy of the game to give you a lot more interesting choices. I used to play the game on sort of what was known as fast speed, so something like this. And at this point, I just find that there's enough interesting choices in terms of how I'm trying to keep my edge over my opponents that I've actually slowed down my play a bit to try and make those choices. So hopefully that answers the question that you had, Trinkasap. If you want to give me some examples in terms of some things that you've done in EVE that would be appealing, I might be able to give you something more specific, but in my opinion, like most of the games that I've played that I've won against people, it's not necessarily because I've designed a particularly smart fleet. It's usually been because I've outproduced them. Although that was under the old patches. I don't know how it'd fare in the new patch. After the study of Strom 9 has concluded, Science Officer Ash Oak reports that they have found the planet to be unusually rich in minerals. This discovery was made possible in large part thanks to a certain member of the RCA Hemivalis crew. Ash Oak praises the protege highly. Okay, so I can get a new free scientist, and that's actually a little tempting. Or I can say they do good work where they are. Yeah, actually, because I've got this spare ship just hanging around, let's offer this protege a science officer position. And what I'll do is I'll actually just get this science ship. I'll just put it on, like, automation. I could, of course, get them to assist research on the capital, which will give them a 12% bonus. But in my opinion, it's actually probably better that I go and explore the wider universe in its current form. How does diplomacy and betrayal factor in? A big part of EVE is the relationships that you build with people. So that's a little bit of a harder one to deal with, Trinkasap. I will say that they've not really done a major upgrade in terms of the diplomacy system. I am being a little unfair to Stellaris, I think, when I say that. And that's because... actually, let's build the research stations first. They did add a couple new diplomatic options. So right now I've got a commercial pact with these species here. In terms of AI, there's certain personalities, there's certain levels of trust. You can definitely bribe them. So I would sort of say it's equivalent to civilization, which I think has got a passable diplomacy system, but it's maybe not... Like, I really liked the diplomacy system in Alpha Centauri, and I think... they really haven't gotten back to this idea of sort of people have these conflicting ideas that they want. like you basically, by being friendly to someone, you necessarily have to frustrate another group. I'm not entirely sure Civilization's ever gotten back to that, except maybe in this most recent one, 6. So I'd sort of compare the diplomacy to Civilization inside of Stellaris as it is right now. You do have, again, like in my case, because I'm playing a megacorp, I have some incentives in terms of keeping research agreements and these migration treaties and such. One factor that keeps you honest about it is actually you have factions within your own system. So right now I have just ideologies that are generally favorable towards getting along with people. Just slightly under half of my population is xenophilic, which means that they're part of the Xeno Equality lobby, which means that they're going to like, no species-wide slavery, no purges. They're going to want me to have a multicultural society. I can actually change one of my laws here to make them a bit happier. I should have done that earlier. So where are we? Under policies, native interference. Wait a minute. Sorry, I got to figure out what they want again. So they want indirect xenology, legislating a passive study. Okay, so here's something I'll go through exactly how this gets modeled. We'll leave the marauders to one side. So basically, these factions inside of your system generate influence. Influence is what will allow you to expand your borders as well as do other certain actions inside the game. Like in this case, I have the galactic market in my capital, which will give me a bonus towards buying, or rather a lower cost towards buying certain goods. So this is a pretty big faction inside of my my empire, and so the happier they are, the more influence that they're going to generate, which means basically the stronger I am. One thing that I can do to make them happy is to change a law, and in this case I'm going to change my native interference from unrestricted. Even the most primitive life form is but another actor on the stage of galactic conflict. Should they lack the strength to resist, what right do they have to be masters of their own fate? And I will now change this to passive study. Primitive societies have the right to exist and evolve at their own pace, free from the control and designs of others. So this is basically just telling me that I'm not going to be able to change it for another 10 years. But what's going to happen is I'm going to get a small bonus towards my influence. So in this case, depending on the species that you're playing, there can be internal forces that push you towards certain actions. There's definitely more militaristic forces or xenophobic forces that will make you not want to get along with certain systems. Obviously, if you betray someone in the game, that's going to be an opinion negative. So obviously they're less likely to do deals with you later. But again, an AI can only take you so far. Definitely when you play the game with other people, the whole question about whether or not you can rely on people. I mean, the last multiplayer game I played, there was a coalition that formed against me, and essentially the coalition was broken by virtue of the fact that I put these overwhelming forces on the borders of the two closest members to me. And the message was pretty clear, like, you might be a member of this and I might go down, but you are not surviving this game if you do. And essentially I offered an alliance with those neighboring systems, and sure enough, with a defector, the thing collapsed, and I was able to pull the game out from there. That was, by the way, with another streamer, so K5RTO can relay that story if you wanted. So it depends. In terms of the AI, again, you're not looking at anything particularly more sophisticated than what's in say Civilization, and that's not a knock against Stellaris or Civilization. It's just I don't want to oversell the game. But on the other hand, like, if you do like playing multiplayer games, and there seems to be a pretty robust online community for this, I just tend not to participate in it that much myself. I definitely think that the way the game is set up is you do get these interesting situations in terms of, especially with the megacorps, because one of the things about the megacorps is that I actually needed to open contracts. So I opened a commercial pact with this system, or with that empire and that empire, but these guys were hostile towards me, and so I wasn't able to expand. Now, these guys are getting certain bonuses by having commercial pacts with me. These guys are missing out, but of course I'm also getting certain benefits for having offices on their world. So depending on what your empire's strengths are, the mechanics of your empire will lead you towards being friendly or more hostile towards people. Anyways, the Crabnor Marauders, shareholder weaklings. Our warriors are on their way to plunder your systems. Face them in battle if you can muster the courage, or cower in fear until they've had their fill of your riches. You can, of course, offer tribute now and spare yourselves from the coming onslaught. If it is sufficient, our warriors may be compelled to turn back. So in this case, I can give up 500 minerals, which is honestly going to be less than what it costs me to repair the ships for fighting these guys, even if I could take them on. So I'm not going to tempt fate there. A pity. I suppose our warriors will have to look elsewhere for entertainment then. Your people are safe, for the moment at least. All right, let's take a quick second and figure out what I'm doing on Python. So Python has a pretty good argument for being a commercial center. So we've already got one civilian industries down. We've got enough housing. We've got enough amenities to keep people going by. I think in this case, again, I'd like to do things like Ministry of Culture, but I know that I'm going to be suffering for consumer goods, and I'm only going to want to be generating more research and Unity-producing buildings. So in this case, Python isn't in the Rhizome capital system, so they're not going to get the bonuses from the research bonuses. In this case, we'll move on. One longer-term plan that I have... Oh, sorry, haven't you built an observatory for your primitive society? I don't have a primitive society in my borders. This one is not... Oh, actually, Nope, this isn't in my system yet. Yeah, I don't believe there are any primitive societies in my systems right now. I need to wait for my ship to colonize. Or not colonize, but claim it. So one of the longer-term goals that I have right now is, because Rose Maple is an intellectual, which gives a % bonus towards research, one of the things I might consider doing over time is eventually switching out some of these foundries and putting them on a planet like Python or Akram, even Halvam, but Halvam obviously is a Gaia world, so there might be reasons for me not to, to keep those free. So essentially, if I can turn Rhizome, Yamal, and Gaul into planets that have a research focus rather than civilian industries or any of these other things. Obviously, I want to make sure that they still have things like amenities and whatnot. I don't want to have negative migration, speaking of which. So it looks like Python's getting some minuses, as is Akram. And Halvam was obviously a Gaia world, so a little less to worry about there. Actually, you know what? We'll do the migration treaty. Because I think that'll get us our multicultural species, and I think I have enough growth that I'm going to be able to cover the mobility. So opening migration between us make for a better future for shareholders and Benarthi alike. So yeah, a longer term plan that I have is to sort of optimize the location of my of some of my industries. Obviously, these particular sectors, we don't have the ability to control sectors anymore inside of our systems. So the idea here is that Rhizome Capital, this capital system in particular, is important to me because I know that if a governor has a bonus to research, it's going to transmit to 3 planets, and that's unique to any of my other sectors. And that's why I want my industrial production, my military production to kind of go into these other areas here, while I want all of my research to be gathering those bonuses as much as possible. So, yeah, Flindome, I've actually been playing it a couple of the past weeks. Ebenezer Hawthorne is no longer with us. He is succeeded by his son, Bud Hawthorne. But we've been doing pretty well with it so far. So, and unfortunately, I'm a little bit slower in updating the Twitter account, but I think what it's going to turn into is a little bit of a diary of the events that happen inside the game. All right, Long-term exposure to the pollen naturally occurring in Halvan Prime's atmosphere acts on the colonists' pheromone receptors with a mild aphrodisiac effect, accompanied by a barely perceptible high. The plant that produces the most potent strain is a flower common to all areas of the planet, squirreled away into some obscure taxonomic nook by scientists on Halvan Prime, but known in the local shareholder dialect as Marin Karin. So we can say remarkable. Pheromone first stage modifier adds happiness plus 10%. That's the Gaia world, right? That is. And that's going to offset the weak magnetic field. And then we can say we cannot allow mind-altering particles in the atmosphere at a cost of energy. But right now, I think we'll let the species get nicely done. Yeah, not a problem at all, Trinkasnap. I really appreciate that follow. I appreciate the kind words. I would be much happier if I knew that you were off enjoying Stellaris on your own. But if you do like this game, we actually do any Paradox Grand Strategy game every Monday on this cast. So usually between 7 or 8 p.m. Eastern Time, I'll go for about 3 hours. And I've been on Stellaris for a while. I do also play Crusader Kings 2. So if you had your eye on that, I do occasionally play that particular one. Obviously, if you're playing the game and you have any questions or any interests, or just want to chat about the game and say something really wild that happened, I love having bodies inside the channel. It's been a pleasure to have you there as well. But I also know that the enjoyment of these kinds of games is sometimes a private thing, and I definitely know that I'm not everyone's cup of tea. So if you just drop that follow and I never see you again, absolutely no hard feelings. But above all, I really do hope you enjoy the game. And I don't know, I would take a quick look. I don't know if you have a favorite place to buy, but I believe there's still a sale going on Humble Bundle. And so if you want to get the game at a discount, I know Paradox put Cities Skylines on sale, so you might be able to get it at a good deal. One last resource I'll recommend for you if you haven't checked it out, StellarisWiki.com is maintained by Paradox. I believe it has a beginner's guide if you want to supplement to the in-game tutorial. And it'll also have a little bit of a guide in terms of what you get through the DLC. So if you find that you've sort of hit the limits of what you were interested in the base game, you want to start picking up some of the expansions. That I tend to find that resource is pretty good for guiding you. Or obviously you can stop by and ask me my opinions. I'm certainly not shy about them. But honestly, Trinket, it's a pleasure. I'm glad that you're excited about this game because I've had an absolutely fantastic time with it personally. Oh, sorry. Flindoma says, would you be interested in giving away 5% of the equity for 2,000 credits? That's a little light there, Flindomo. We're a sprawling space empire. We're actually almost getting our empire sprawl down finally. You didn't know Paradox itself kept it? Your friend read most of it, and he's pretty aware of what happens in that game? Sorry, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, though. Oh, Stellaris Wiki, you mean. Yeah, no, they maintain wikis for all of their games, including Surviving Mars. We've encountered another abandoned gateway, this time near the Faranus Black Hole. It appears to have been built entirely by microscopic nanites of unknown design. Unlike the previous structure, this gateway has been significantly altered since its initial construction. Its construction to the rest of the network has been severed. Instead, and the only valid destination is an uncharted group of stars just beyond our galaxy that has been designated the L cluster by our astronomers. Although the gateway emits a faint power signature, it has been deliberately locked into some kind of maintenance loop that prevents its activation. Until we find some way of aborting this process, the L cluster will remain beyond our reach.
Situation log revised.
So realistically, I'm not going to be activating this the L cluster for quite some time. But there is a fairly reasonable argument for me to expand my borders out to lock this thing down. The drawback is there aren't a lot of natural choke points. So if I expand my borders out to here, really as far as choke points are concerned, oh God. I mean, depending on what happens in the lower part of the galaxy, maybe VMAS? We'll see. Will you save scum the L cluster? I'm doing Iron Man. I don't think it's possible to save. What do you mean by save scum, by the way? Like, I've only ever had good things come out of the L cluster, but I am told that apparently bad things can happen too. I just think you guys are like, I think Paradox just recognizes my natural talent for Stellaris, and as a result, they've only ever given me positive RNG for that.
Upscaling complete.
I'm a little tempted to build a
Market outlier identified.
small and otherwise insignificant moon orbiting a gas giant appears to be on a trajectory that will soon result in a collision with its primary. So I'll research that. Well, we'll see, yeah. With my luck, I'll be, like, obliterated by the Vunacon shard before they... This is a pacifist empire, by the way. Like, I think Megacorps made pacifist empires a lot more exciting to play.
Surveyed.
I know they were always a little more exciting than I think they got credit for, but they're particularly interesting now. Ha! These guys! Oh, I love them. All right. Hello again. You'll be pleased to learn that our species has quadrupled in number since we arrived. Many of us were swept up in a festive mood when we made planetfall, and things got a bit frisky, to say the least. After the positive experience we had colonizing Baldorak, a few brave pioneers asked me to petition you for passage to another gas giant. We've already located a promising candidate within your space that would be suitable for colonization. What do you say, friends? So, Kalishtar. You can hear the RNG laughing there, yeah. The RNG will exact its horrible revenge when the Great Khan spawns right beside my capital. Don't worry, guys. I will get my comeuppance. I think this is one we'll probably put on the Twitter account before too long. So, for those of you who don't know, the Dathnak quest chain is a little irritating by design, but it is extremely charming. These are like the neighbors that are constantly borrowing stuff. I actually have a coworker who's a great guy. I really like talking about economic stuff with him, and I like it because he's willing to sort of call out some of the pretenses of my coworkers. But he always borrows like some of my best textbooks, and he never reads them. So he's kind of like I really like him, but I really wish he would stop hoarding my good textbooks. It's a little like that. So, well, okay, as long as it's just another gas giant.
Situation log revised.
Yeah, Splendomo, I did not realize how strong Inward Perfection was until I tried it once, and I sort of realized that because I, for whatever reason, didn't recognize, I didn't really recognize the power of Inward Perfection, I was playing pacifists that didn't have that. And I wonder if these guys have that actually. We can take a quick look at the, I think, oh no, it's in the species menu. Oh, they're not in my systems yet. Surely I can see the traits of the, where are you? Huh. Intelligent. No, that's a civic, though. I guess there isn't a way for me to see their civics, is there? It's in the Empire menu? Tropical preference, intelligent, engineering. I'm almost certain there's a way of seeing... Oh, you know what? Maybe it's on the capital world. I mean, I'm not going to spend the whole cast looking for it, but it'd be nice to know... Huh. I guess I can't see the civics. While I'm at it, though, I'm going to take a quick tour of my branch offices just to make sure that I can't. Obviously, if I can offload some of my consumer goods production. The cat aliens, I believe they are a default mammalian species, but let me just double check that because I know Utopia got some. I'm just gonna, I normally bring up, so for those of you who don't know this, you can actually bring up you should be able to bring up the wiki in game. Yes, you can. The only problem is that I think it's because I'm playing in windowed mode. There's an offset to the cursor that I can't quite work with. So, but it actually, well, you know what? Let's see. I put it to slowest. I bet if I do a search, oh no, that's not quite gonna work. Oh, hang on, but I can make it. Ah, it's not worth it. I'm just gonna do a regular old browser search. Stellaris, wiki, Snalien. Okay, so under the species section in the Paradox wiki, which I will paste inside of chat, if you scroll down, it'll actually show you all of the portraits. And if you go under... Oh, maybe it isn't mammalian. Who else would it be, though? That's clearly a mammal. It's massive 14, and I believe, yes, that is a default. That is a default level portrait. There is the cuties pack, so I think that came with Utopia. And Flindoma says, Megacorp rekindled your love for sci-fi, got you back into Star Wars The Old Republic, looking forward to Season 2 of Star Trek Destiny. I have never seen a Star Trek movie beyond The Next Generation First Contact. Actually, I think I might have seen Nemesis as well, but that was a very forgettable movie. And I've not played Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, unless the Old Republic refers to something else. So I actually need to... Oh wait, you must be talking about the MMO. Anyways, I've not played either. So as much as I love science fiction, I'm actually really bad for being on top of it. But we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Oh, you recently uninstalled Destiny 2? Is it just you got a little tired of it, or is there like did you swear of oath and of enmity and like yeah, that's it? You'll never look at that beast again. What was I going to say?
Outlier identified.
Sensor echoes have indicated the presence of some kind of unidentified object deep within the atmosphere of this gas giant. Oh yeah, we went over some of my old species in sort of like the loading screen in that. I wonder, have I finished the phase shift yet? No, I haven't. I actually need to get a scientist out there. But yeah, I think... what's the best way for me to put it? The thing that's always really pushed me for this game is the fact that you can kind of do all of science fiction. You know, however you want to realize it. Oh, you know what? This is such an abuse of my authority, but I can absolutely take the Breeze, which is it's a Federation fleet.
Upscaling complete.
And I can actually send it out to clear out some of the enemies in the region. That's the wrong incentive. What was that? That was probably just another research facility. It was indeed. So I'm probably going to get hammered for my consumer goods before too long, but I'm okay with that because those resources exist to be consumed. But yeah, so we were talking a little bit about, you know, the real sort of secret or the real special sauce of Stellaris is the fact that you can basically do all of science fiction in a game. And this has been one of the things that has always kept me coming back to Stellaris, is the fact that there are, there's always a new experience, there's always a new story to tell. When I'm tired of playing materialists that always have an AI to play with, I can turn around and decide, okay, you know what, I'm really a maniac for for inward perfection now. And actually, that's one of the big ones that I want to do with the new victory conditions, which you can see here. It looks like this is my rival. I need to be careful about this because these guys are catching up. They actually have a larger economy than me. I wonder what determines that. I've got better technology. They have more systems. Yeah, if not for my Federation, they would actually be ahead of me. Now, what about military? Does it list that? No. But I definitely need to keep an eye on that. Oh, Divinity 2 is such a good game. I played a little bit of Divinity Original Sin with Johnny Big Time. It never quite took off. It's a really good game, but it's a little hard to do in multiplayer, I find, which is a shame because it really is designed for that. But Divinity Original Sin is a really impressive RPG. I have struggled to sort of get into some of the Children of Baldur's Gate, and I know that's heresy, especially after I was talking smack about Deus Ex on Twitter. But yeah, it was definitely Divinity Original Sin 2 is a really impressive achievement, and I think it's overcome a lot of the challenges that I run into in those kinds of games. 2-player with a close friend. Will you be close friends at the end of it is the real question. The shattered remnants of a cruiser-sized starship can be detected in the decaying orbit deep inside the atmosphere of Cytene 2. It appears to have ventured far into the gas giant's atmosphere, perhaps in a desperate attempt to escape a pursuer, only to be crushed by the atmospheric pressure. The vessel is too deep to be salvaged, but a structural scan of the wreckage has provided us with some interesting engineering data. A remarkable vessel, 150 engineering for our trouble.
Ships upscaled.
Cool. All right, I should probably be focusing a little bit on bolstering my fleet. So right now we've just got a derelict class. Reports from Halvam Prime indicate that worker productivity has declined recently, becoming stable at levels several % lower than Rhizome Capital's average. This may or may not be due to the stimulating effects of the pollen native to the planet. It probably is. A special project has been prepared should we wish to make our production pipelines more efficient to make up for this loss. Let's see what can be done.
Situation log revised.
We'll obviously collect as many taxes as we possibly can on this thing. I have no science ships even remotely close to where they need to be. Okay, so they'll establish the Dathnak colony, and then immediately after they will research the project. How much time do we have? We should get that done in time. We already spoiled it? Oh, fair enough. Well, actually, I don't know the ending of it. I just know that from the basis of my experience in the first game, it's sorry, with my experience in the first game, it definitely lends itself to a particularly rivalrous experience. But now I'm really curious what Ascension means in that game. All right, I'm trying to combine all of these ships together into one group. And again, I'm completely abusing my position as the current president of the Federation, just to use the Federation resources to clear out hostile ships in my area. So I'm of two minds on the spoiler
Special
thing.
project actualized.
I don't like it when people come in and tell me how to play games. I don't like it when people go in and I'm playing The Walking Dead and they're like, oh, do this option because this happens later. Because I feel like that is really somebody going out of their way either to ruin the enjoyment of the game, or that they are putting my enjoyment of the game secondary to their, their ability to play it through chat. So that's a little bit more of a respect thing. I'm definitely not the sort of person who's like, sorry guys, you can't have a conversation around me because I'm not caught up on my Netflix or my gaming, and I, my poor delicate ears cannot be subjected to things that you enjoy talking about. I don't like using spoilers as a chance to shut down conversations. So yeah, I'm not like, you can kind of tell what somebody's intentions are, so I'm not gonna scream at you and cast you out. As before, a convoy of freighters was assembled to safely transport the Dathnat colonists inside pressurized gas tanks. After a brief journey, they successfully made planetfall on the gas giant, which they have named New Baldorak. A satellite was left in orbit to allow for long-range communication with Baldorak. And Rukbat gets 3 additional society. So that's maybe one thing that's worth mentioning. This thing is not a 100% cost to you. You do get bonuses for social research for doing this quest line. Okay, Ash Oak is upgraded, and they are surveying. Actually, so let's get a quick look at what you're up to.
Future market survey complete.
Okay, so you're going to finish your exploration here, and then we're going to put you to work on the Veil. One of the many moons circling Rogilia 3 has a terminal orbit. It will soon collide with the gas giant in what is sure to become a massive impact event. This event has been millions of years in the making, and yet it is a startling coincidence that the impact has been fated to occur just after a visit by one of our ships. Many of our scientists wish to observe and record the event, but we only have a narrow window before it is too late. Fascinating.
Situation log revised.
Okay, so this one's currently on an exploration mission. Again, for those of you who don't know this incredibly helpful hotkey, I'm holding Control Shift and research projects in the system. You'll notice that it's put Observe Moon Impact to the top of the queue, even though I still have the rest of my thing in place. Obviously, you also do not need to right-click. I do that because I think it's a little bit more telegenic for streaming, but you can take advantage of the buttons here. I just, where I can, I try to actually show the actions that I'm taking, because I know, like, nobody's watching this stream for like top-tier gameplay in Stellaris. What I think kind of my added value can sometimes be is showing people either things that they didn't know about the game before, or sorry, I just gotta figure out. So that was 2, 3, 4. So that was 8. I owe me one
Research
more Corvette.
actualized.
Hooray! Okay, this is great news. Although I think probably I misread. It wasn't 50, it was 20. So that's less of a boost than I thought I was going to get. Local administrative developments allow for closer supervision of colonial affairs without excessively burdening central decision-making. I'm very tempted to do the business management nexus next, and that's because that will give me additional unity. It'll also improve my my social research. I don't have that many corporate monuments, but maybe the better way for me to examine this choice is through alternatives. So I don't really need the extra fleet command limit. I think I'm okay having to, I mean, I'm obviously not going to have 250 stacks because I only have a fleet cap of 50, although that'll change when I upgrade my Bastion here. Now, getting rid of the dangerous wildlife has its own benefits. So where are we? Yamal Prime. I don't think... Oh, I guess it was the Paradise. So basically, we're missing out on two zones. But as you can see, we've got size 25 already. So it's not like we're going to be hitting that cap anytime soon. So in this case, even though this is, the same cost, and it does technically unlock more resources for me, it's on a planet that really doesn't need that much more as far as, as far as access to resources are concerned. So I could also explore the possibilities of things like frequency turning and such like that, but I'll leave these be for now because I've already got a little research inside them. I'll always have these available. So let's knock off dangerous wildlife removal because I think any of these appealing options here will at least allow me to get more than what I could from unlocking resources on a planet that already isn't at capacity. Now, naval capacity from soldier jobs +2. This is a kind of a meaningful one. I actually like this change, and it's not necessarily a headline one in Megacorps. It's the fact that you can actually have a better balance between your army and your navy. Like, essentially, everyone in Stellaris is the United Kingdom, or Great Britain, or the British Empire. Like, we've got a massive navy, you beat the hell out of everyone at sea, and you rule the galaxy. So this one has given, I really feel like they've pushed towards giving you some reasons to have some ground troops, because the ground game is not particularly that interesting compared to the Navy. But let's face it, like, with the exception of aliens, Starship Troopers, Battletech, it's not a lot of, like, Army science fiction. It's definitely a lot more navies. So, but I mean, again, this is I'm really just kind of over elaborating here. The naval capacity off of this really isn't quite worth it for me because I don't have that many soldiers. I'm a megacorp. Rhizome Private Security is a subsidiary, but it's not a large part of our portfolio. And again, fleet command limit is more about the organization of my existing sort of fleet resources, but I've got a cap of 65, so really, like, my fleet cap would exceed my my naval capacity, and I don't need to have one big blob. So in this case, the business management nexus is much more consistent with my long-term plans. That's why I'm picking that one. Although I think I'm going to appoint Rowan Garland to engineering. The reasoning for that one is just he's better at research, so we'll get the droids faster. My mining research was really just me taking a punt. So let's carry on. We won't be going for too much longer, but we'll see if we can find sort of a natural closing point for this story. Looks like we found the rapscallions that took
Future market survey complete.
That took our allies, and it's strength 241. So you know what? We're gonna bring Yuka, our delightful space amoeba. Oh, what are you doing? Hell no. So one thing you can do here, this is Marauder space. Because my strength 4.2k fleet does not stand a chance against a 12,000 and 9,000 strength fleet, I am going to say that these areas are now forbidden. Let's try that again, shall we? Nope. You guys need to seriously reevaluate. Okay. I definitely want to bring the amoeba. I am fascinated that they are still trying to get through there. Okay, let's try that again. Also, what do you plan on getting? Do you plan on getting dangerous robot technologies? I haven't I haven't really thought about it, Domi. And Flindoma, who's my greatest threat? I would say the Marauders are just like sitting and waiting to ruin my day. But they've been quite manageable in the current situation. Obviously, I'm not going to antagonize the stagnant ascendancy, so I'm only missing out on a little dark matter and physics for that. So I would say these guys, my Scythian League, they don't like me by default. They've been able to sort of keep. Oh, actually, now they're. That's the first that they've been inferior to me in fleet power. Yeah, I'd say these guys are the biggest overt threat, and the fact that my fleet power is actually going up means I might want to consider dedicating some of my influence towards gobbling up some of their territory. And honestly, it'll be like the low-hanging fruit. So, you know, if I can snag some moats from them to boost my, production. What else? I think if I were to try and like redraw the borders, I would probably want to take up to K-Hines. That's just because that's a natural choke point. I would get a planet for my trouble, a nice 22 continental world, by the way. And I don't believe they've colonized it. So, you know, I'd be up a planet. The resources aren't like that much to write home about. I mean, unless there's something really mind-blowing here. But this really is a lot more about, hey, cool. It's for multiplayer. This is really more about sort of denying the enemy rather than, I mean, it's nice to have the volatile modes. I'd be able to get 2 more alloy factories out of that, but I clearly I've been doing pretty well for myself in that regard. And then I also just think like taking out a space station would probably diminish their naval capacity. But yeah, like the first order threat would be the United Scythian League, and then the second order is the fact that I know that at some point the Great Khan is going to appear, and as a megacorp I just don't see how I'm going to get my fleet strength up to be able to take them on. We're being hailed by a previously unencountered species of sapient mammals regarding the ancient Mardak Val still residing on Paradaya. It seems very urgent. Well met, shareholders. We are the Val, and we come in peace. We have discovered that one of your planets has been infested with Mardak. It is a parasitic fungoid that has preyed upon our kind for eons, turning its hosts into mindless puppets, and you are its next targets. We thought we had eradicated it for good when our annual galaxy scan revealed a thriving population on Paradaya. But fear not, we know just what to do. Purge them with fire? Or nonsense, they're harmless. Oh, this is a tricky one. Be advised, we are commencing orbital extermination protocols in 3, 2, 1. Airborne dissolvent, Fungo X released into infected populations. Hostile agents neutralized. Do not be alarmed. Any environmental changes you may be registering are not temporary and are completely irreversible. We thank you for your cooperation. We are the Val. We come in peace. Peace. Environmental changes? The channel crackles and pops. We have lost our connection with the Val. Oh, sorry about that,
Upscaling
Flindomo.
complete.
I have 3 Gaia worlds in my... territory now. But I'm shy on alloys. Hey Tom P, I see you there in the CVG Discord. See, oh, Convergence Discord. Tom P, thank you kindly for that. Yes, K5 very kindly invited me to that. We've actually played Stellaris together, so thank you very much for that, Tom P. Obviously the Convergence has been extremely friendly towards this channel. I regret I'm actually going to be wrapping up fairly soon, so I do hope that you come back. But thank you very much for that. I really do appreciate that. What was it? Flindomo says, you wonder how they would react if the next species to discover Paradise whatever were also fungoid. We're not fungoid, we're plantoid. We're Rhizome capital. Leaf growth to the experts. Who else did we have? Oh, Immortal Magic. Wow, that's better than expected. Yeah, I was expecting to see a husk. Not only, like, so it's not only a Gaia world, but unlike my other Gaia world, which has got the weird magnetism, we've got 10% bonus to happiness, 10% bonus to unity, plus 20% to food, which I'm actually starting to run out on. So this is like a great farming planet. And then of course the immigration pull, but I think that's standard for a Gaia world. In fact, I should actually probably start putting a little bit of work on Halvam. Let's get the agriculture up, and I think I'll probably start putting some bots down. No, you know what? Now I'm still gonna go for the. No, I can't bring myself to do it. Pytham's got a lot of farming resources. We'll give you one more farm. Give the bot something to do. In the meantime, Yamal. Seems like a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, it's going to be unemployed on Gull for a little while, but... You expected Toxic at least. You've never seen that event before, but you don't have Distant Stars yet. Yeah, I can't remember if that's a... I can't remember if that event... Or if that event always turns out that way, or if I just got lucky. I'm assuming that it's... I'm assuming that it probably takes from some distribution, but I don't. I usually just kind of like ride with it. I tend not to go into the files too much. I actually rather like Distant Stars. I know people are always like 50-50 on the story packs. I of course like to remind people that we got the Horizon signal in the first story pack, Leviathans, and obviously Alexis is a big friend of this cast's. Oh, actually, a quick reminder for those of you who come here for the Cultist Simulator stuff. We are going to be on the Steam page on the 22nd. That hasn't changed. We'll be doing the new long missions, or the Apostle Legacy. I am told it is absolutely devastating. So I'm sure I will die a lot. But if you guys haven't seen Cultist Simulator, definitely recommend checking out it'll just be on the Steam page. Like if you click on Cultist Simulator on Steam, you'll see my lack of face on there, and I'm gonna try and do like another full 8 hours as is our way. So but yeah, anyways, you know, the last couple of story packs have been pretty good. And I totally get that some people are not too keen on Distant Stars, but the big thing about me, especially because I'm spending more time on like normal speed, I really like the fact that the events that pop up don't feel stale anymore. So I can totally understand people wanting to pick something like that up on a sale, but I really feel like Distant Stars is a little bit of a sleeper DLC, because I think the added value is something that has sort of I've been appreciating it in layers. All right, Myron Karen, rooted in place. A recent survey indicates the residents of Halvam Prime are much less likely than other denizens of Rhizome Capital to migrate to other planets. The survey does not address whether this could be due to a psychological dependency on the low-level sensory arousal called by Myron Karen on its sibling plants. Pheromone third stage modifier added, giving the following effects: all migration minus 75%.
Special project actualized.
We were successful in our attempt to record the collision between Rogia 3 and its moon. The event was captured from several different angles and transmitted live throughout our space. Most importantly, our scientists under the leadership of Wugtam were able to record a large amount of valuable physics data that will surely benefit our research. Marvelous. But yeah, sorry for a little promotion out there, but is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? And yeah, if you don't know what Cultist Simulator is, if you liked the Horizon Signal, it is the author of that has his own company, which he co-founded with his fiancée and super producer Lottie Bevan. Alexis Kennedy is the author of the Horizon Signal.
Research
and they
actualized.
made a very unusual and very engaging sort of card narrative game called Cultist Simulator. And it's something I kickstarted, which meant I get access to the Perpetual Edition, which basically gives you all of the DLC that's produced for the game for life in the price. But the most recent legacy that will be brought out on the 22nd, and the one that we will be sort of promoting on the Steam page, is actually a free update, much like I think Alexis has been pretty open that his inspiration for the DLC policy for Cultist Simulator directly comes from these Swedish people who make these wonderful grand strategy games. So if you've not heard of it, and you are looking for something in a similar tone, I definitely recommend checking out Cultist Simulator. Even if you don't check out the stream I'm doing for it, definitely do check out that game, because it's really good, and Alexis and Letty are impossibly nice people who have given me a lot of support as a streamer, but have given a lot of game developers support to a point that I don't necessarily think people really know the influence that they've sort of had on some people. So I'm never going to get tired of letting them be known, and if you've not heard of them, I definitely encourage you to check out those names. So. The mining drone laser, using strong focus lenses in combination with an oscillating firing sequence, can help create lasers strong enough to mine asteroids or shoot down hostiles. I don't think that'll be an upgrade for any of my ships. Research complexes. Now this is going to absolutely devastate me as far as my consumer goods are concerned, but this is definitely going to ramp up my research. And obviously it's the lowest cost of all of my options here. So we'll get you in the exotic materials labs. Rowan Garland is going to be reassigned to his specialty. And unfortunately, the new guy gets assigned to the dangerous AI. And we've got Mortal Magic saying, all the complaints seem to be about the L Gate, but no one mentions all the other added events. You're just on a budget. You'd pick it up now, but you don't want to pay more than $5 for the expansion, so you're always a little behind. I mean, honestly, Immortal Magic, like, I am very grateful to Paradox for kind of getting me covered as far as this DLC is concerned. Because it's important to remember, the majority of my streaming was actually done while I was in grad school. So I completely appreciate it when people say that they're on a budget. Because the fact of the matter is, like, Paradox releases a lot of updates for these games, and these updates come with DLC. And especially if you have more than one, like, it adds up. So before I established myself as a streamer, I was always playing Crusader Kings was my thing for such a long time. It still is, but obviously Stellaris is a little bit more of a draw on Steam or on stream. I was always playing like one or two packs behind, and honestly, there's so much to experience inside of these games that I think really the matter is, you know, you decide your price. It's Paradox's job to make the value proposition. So if somebody doesn't think that it's worth more than $5, it's either up to Paradox to price it at that at some point, which would probably be a few years down the road, or alternatively, it's up to them to communicate why that particular DLC is worth the price that they charged. And I have been critical of the DLC policy in the past. I thought for a long time while Crusader Kings was sort of pumping out these DLCs as well as like these unit packs, I wasn't entirely convinced it was worth it, and I didn't shy away from saying as much. But I'll be honest, I really like the way they've done Stellaris. One, because of the story packs and sort of the more beefier expansions, but I also think things like the cosmetic DLC, like the Humanoids DLC pack, is actually a nice example of how I think they've got the balance better, because obviously this is a game with a great soundtrack, and the Humanoids DLC actually comes with extra songs. It's maybe not something, it's to your taste, like they're a little more like remixes, so it may not quite be something that you're into. And then they gave you like the Roman names, and in addition to the portraits and things like that, and of course a few more AI assistant voices. So like in that sense, you're really not just paying for some portraits, but you're getting like a little bit of a pack, which, you know, again, it's not going to change your gameplay experience in terms of like direct mechanics, but definitely it gives you a little bit more to play with this, this set of, it's like getting a new set of paints, right? You know, of course you can paint with the colors that you already have, but obviously if you have sort of these Latin names, or if you have, these more emotive AI assistants, you just kind of get to create a fantasy that maybe you didn't have before. And, obviously we live in a world of scarcity, so these things do carry a cost. But I feel like Stellaris has done a better job of sort of giving you value for money, and at this point it's just a matter of deciding what that dollar value is worth. But I definitely have a lot of sympathy for the fact that, I'm probably going to be wrapping up for tonight, guys. That's kind of why I'm more in monologue mode now. But I really think that Paradox is sort of inherited from the kind of the old miniatures series. So like obviously Games Workshop is a pretty expensive hobby because the paints, they kind of carry a premium because they have the Citadel miniatures named to it. Buying the figures is fairly costly. And I think strategy gamers as a whole are used to buying components, like model trains, right? You always buy a new thing. So if you look, like Train Simulator and strategy games like Total War and the Paradox Grand Strategy games, they've got a business model which involves lots of expansions, lots of little things that you can buy off the shelf. Some people have to have everything. And obviously they need to have the wherewithal to get it, because let's face it, there's more important things in life than video games. And then some people decide, it's like, I really just want to focus on this one small bit here, and I'm gonna budget for that. And it's nice and inclusive, because obviously if you know somebody who has the existing DLC, you're not blocked from playing with them. If you have a Chaos army and your friend is a Bretonnian army, you can play. You have the two halves of the whole, and you can have a good time with that. And then maybe somebody owns all of the Citadel miniatures because they are an original Microsoft employee. So I really do think that these games reflect their origins, and I think strategy audiences are a little bit more accustomed to those kinds of business models than, say, somebody who plays first-person shooters. And if you notice, games like Battlefield 5 have removed the DLC model, and that's partially due to consumer sentiment. But part of that is also because I think what they're more interested in doing now is kind of creating a platform that you'll spend a lot of time inside. And so, in the end, you sort of need to pick what your level of engagement will be with it. And for me, I find a lot of depth in terms of having new events and such, and so I like things like Distant Stars. But on the other hand, I know, because I like these sort of, if you're wild to play a corporation, in a way that you weren't before, clearly the Megacorps expansion is the better choice. And I think the wiki is probably the best place for deciding that stuff. Anyways, I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to monologue quite as much on that, but I'm close to the end. So let's finish the Marin Karen dialogue. We'll do a quick recap of what the next few turns are going to be. I'll give you guys a quick outline of the plans for the week, and then I will wish you all a good night and find some good human being to host for the evening. And I really do apologize for the people who recently started watching, but I'm actually rather severely over time. So, well, productivity is no longer declining on the planet. Communications between the colony on Halvam Prime and the capital of Rhizome Capital are breaking down. Senior officials on Halvam Prime, I'm just going to call it Capital Headquarters. Senior officials on Halvam Prime are growing increasingly distant, and our clerks are complaining that even relaying simple directives is becoming an exercise in frustration. So we can deploy an administrative task force, code MOVE, or... Flindomo says, you guess the complaints are about how the L gate can absolutely demolish an Iron Man play fluid at the speed at which you can access them. You know, I remember hearing that complaint about the Horizon signal at some point too. I think you can probably argue that the Great Khan will do that as well. I don't know though, like I'll be honest with you, I've been very lucky in my L gate experience. I have not had an L gate experience that devastated me yet. I've had ones that I've needed to really... I've needed to kind of grab the reins and really rebalance stuff, but I've not been devastated by the L gate yet. So, like I said, naturally it's my green eyes and sexual charisma that have gotten me through the L gate. So, I realize life is hard for some of you out there, but you have my sympathy. All right. On that self-aggrandizing note, this has been Rhizome Capital. So I'm a little bit encouraged by the fact that my fleet is getting a bit stronger than my rivals, and of course I'm going to be building up my fleets in the shipyards in Equity. So I think once we clear out the ransomeers and probably punch a few of the alien vessels, I might try and see if my allies on Hythus want a little bit of just a little bit of dusting up of the Scythian League. Really, I think what I'll probably wind up doing... The drawback here is that my influence is a bit scarce, and the problem is I need to find which systems I want to colonize, which ones I want to set up sort of some bases in. So, for example, Siplum with its 10 physics research is a pretty high priority for me, whereas Jezamil, 2 energy, ooh. But the real benefit here, I want to try and, if I can, move up to Canis. 1, because it's a natural choke point. 2, because it's going to deny them access to the moats on Tatonga. They almost certainly don't have the resources to mine these volatile moats. I'm pretty sure they would have taken that already. Now the drawback, of course, is going to be that Spica is that's not going to be an easy one to take down. I don't think I can see how strong the base is, but we're probably looking at around, I'd say, 2.5k strength. Now I'm going to be coming after them with a 4.2k strength fleet, but it's not like they're just going to be sitting idle. In fact, there might be a very good argument for me to take my fleets to rush Canis, take a small little expeditionary force, and gobble up these remaining systems. And then after we've sort of secured this area here, I can take the big blob, take this territory, and then head back to the choke point. Those are a couple of options available to me. Now, in reality, though, I'm going to be waiting on this a very long time because I'm going to need a lot of influence to claim all of these territories. And again, we are relatively peaceful, so I don't necessarily want to go looking for a fight, but this is definitely a very natural way for me to gobble up a little bit of the enemy territory, add a colonizable planet to my own area, get something that will improve my alloys, which of course will make my fleet stronger in the future, and just generally, bloody the one rival that's potentially going to cause me some trouble. But we'll see. I mean, it carries its own costs because my administrative capacity did not go up by 50 as originally thought. It went up by 20 because apparently I can't read numbers, a severe drawback in my line of work. But yeah, that's a little bit of a pie-in-the-sky operation. As far as sort of immediate plans, I definitely want to colonize my two Gaia worlds. I've got a size 22 and a size 25, in addition to Halvam, which currently has got all of the stoners on it. And then little side missions, we'll deal with the ransomeers. I'm sending the Federation fleet to deal with this little area just to see if we can find something up to the north. But honestly, I wouldn't be too sorry if my administrative capacity went up a little bit, and I could just sort of carve off this part of the galaxy for myself. Obviously, I'm counting my ally inside of that. That's not intentional. But these are all more intermediate ones. My medium-term plan definitely needs to be building up my naval capacity to deal with the eventuality of the Great Khan. But the truth of the matter is, the way that it's set up right now, if the Great Khan wakes up, I'm just gonna get pummeled. And essentially, if the Great Khan wakes, the first thing I'll do is surrender, because there's just simply no way that I'm gonna be able to take 6.5k fleet strength and turn that into anything but a humiliating defeat. And I believe to kill the Great Khan, you need to beat him in battle like 2 or 3 times. So yeah, if my generals are getting a little bored, the way for me to handle that will be to go after my rival, not to go after the Great Khan. I hope you guys had fun. We recovered. We actually had a lot of people who unfollowed tonight while I was playing, which didn't make me feel great. But it's better that people decide what's best for them. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely appreciate you guys backing that up with new followers as well, because you don't have to be here. I'm glad that you chose to be here, and I hope it was at least worth your time. In terms of plans for the oncoming week, I did want to cover that. So normally Wednesday I do Cultist Simulator. Unfortunately, I am not able to do that this week. Or it's likely I won't do that this week.
I would never want to belong to
Who is that? It's Supervillain. You definitely don't count as a supervillain to me, but thank you nonetheless. You'll be a supervillain if you want to be one, but you've definitely put a smile on my face, so thank you for that. So normally we do Cultist Simulator on Wednesdays. However, the third Wednesday of every month, I go to a local game development collective, Dirty Rectangles. You guys have actually gotten a chance to see some of the games from that now. Some of you may recall Sean LeBlanc, who comes into the channel occasionally. You get to see some of those fun little games that he does, like Judgment, and I can't remember if I showed you guys Definitely a Real MMO, but that's where I find all of this stuff. And again, finding little projects like this is how I find games like Cultist Simulator. So I really did want to continue to be there. I want to be a member of the community in more than just, kind of hitting people up for games or something like that. They're a really fun lot to hang around with. So every Thursday I'm off on casting, but let me just take a quick minute here, and I will let you know that the next episode of Daggerfall, the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall, will be coming up 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. I will definitely say, Daggerfall is getting to a point that the dungeons are so expansive, I don't always have a lot to say, but if you do like the voice that I do for that, there's no shortage of that. We're on our 5th chapter. That one actually has some content to it. We went through a lot of dungeons on that. I'm having a good time with it. It is a vodcast, which means that I won't necessarily be... I won't be able to directly respond to everybody inside of chat by voice. But if you do want to see Elder Scrolls 2, it is a surprisingly robust game. Like, the bugs are infuriating, but there's a lot to do. It is a really impressive RPG, so I've been having a good time with it, even despite the bugs. And then on Friday we'll likely be back to Mass Effect, and then of course on the 22nd we'll be doing that Cultist Simulator stream for the Apostle Legacies, but those will be coming on Steam. Those will not be on Twitch. So anyways, I do appreciate you guys hanging out as long as you are. I know some people just don't care to hear some of those other details coming up. If you're only here for the grand strategy, do feel free to stop by next Monday. We'll likely be doing more Stellaris. And the real question now is whether or not I give you guys Mortal Kombat or Resident Evil 2. I haven't seen Resident Evil 2, and W. Shand is definitely a lot more charismatic than I am. Oh yeah, so because Captain Shield mentioned the Caius voice.
It's a little something like this, but you will have to wait until Tuesday to hear more of it. So please come along with me to raid W. Shand is currently playing Resident Evil 2.
Have a great night, everybody. Thank you very much for your subscriptions, your hosts, your follows, and please do enjoy Resident Evil with W. Shand.